That's awesome. Oh, and just put it inside the.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll say that was before.
So, hey, welcome, everybody. I appreciate everybody coming. I want to recognize our District 3 Council Member Sean Newell, who's online for today's meeting. And then before we get started, I wanted to bring or talk about something. So a couple nights after our last meeting, our District 1 Council Member Doug Peterson passed away. He passed away after a short battle from cancer. And it's been a difficult week for the council. It's a difficult couple of weeks, and not just the council, for his family especially. We feel for Kathy, we've sent our condolences. We're able to attend the viewing and funeral and honor him in multiple ways. But this is a difficult time for us. So one of the things that we've decided to do, sorry about that, is to place this flower here for Doug. Like, at least for the next couple meetings, we might do something a little on a smaller scale once he's replaced. But thank you for everybody's support for Doug. Anyway, item 2 on our agenda is we're going to begin with a review of our business meeting agenda for tonight. We will begin with the pledge, like always. We're going to do an acknowledgement with Doug again, and then have a citizen comment period. We've got 2 staff quarterly staff reports tonight. The first will be from our Public Works Department. We'll have our Public Works Director, Matt Shipp, lead that report. And then we have another one from our Finance and Administrative Services Director, Scott Jurgis, who will give us his quarterly financial report. We have a pretty busy night, 6 items, legislative items to discuss as a council. And the first one being item 6.1, consideration of resolution 2023-20, which is adopting a tentative budget for the period of July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, providing for public inspection of such budget and establishing the time and place of a public hearing to consider adoption of such budget and providing for public notice of such hearing. We're going to discuss that further in the staff report in just a couple minutes. We'll come back to Scott later on that. The next item for tonight is consideration of resolution 2023-21, approving a firework display contract with Lantis Productions for the 2023 Butlerville Days. We're going to discuss that a little bit later within the staff report. And then 6.3, consideration of resolution 2023-22, approving a drone show performance contract with Open Sky Productions, and that's also for the 2023 Butlerville Days. And we will discuss that again further in our staff report. Item 6.4 is consideration of resolution 2023-23, approving an amendment to agreements with CERC Inc. for construction manager general contractor services. And Matt, I'm going to have you actually talk about that right now. Give us some background.
Oh, okay. So this agreement that we are presenting to you tonight, Shane's not here, but he's put together the contract. If you'll recall, about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, we entered into an agreement with CERC that doesn't stand for anything. That's just the name CERC. They liked it, so they took it. So no acronym. We entered an agreement with CERC to do the construction manager general contractor for the Public Works building. We entered into it in a 2-phase type process. Phase 1 was to work with the architect during the design phase for engineering, constructability, and overall pricing and materials. So we have completed that phase. And part of that is that we come back to hire CERC as the GMGC, general manager, as the CMGC, the construction manager, general contractor for this building. Part of the requirements are that they submit a guaranteed maximum price, and that is their fee included with the building of 7.9 million at this point. Now, council budgeted approximately 8.5. We bonded the 7.5, and the council also set aside 1 million to add to that for the project. So overall, if we take that in a nutshell, we have the funds there. But what's not included in the GMP is things such as the furnishings, shop materials, material testing, the Rocky Mountain power line we have to move, and a few of those things, network and IT. And they also included in that is the design, which we've already have a contract for. So overall, the GMP, the guaranteed maximum price is 7.9. We estimate the cost of the building to be around 9 million, roughly 9 million. Now, that gives us about 500,000 over the 8.5 we have. Inside the guaranteed maximum price, there is a contingency of about $420,000. Now, we can use that to offset the cost when the time comes, but we don't know how much of that contingency we'll be using during the construction because obviously we haven't started it yet.
Right.
So we have a fall in there somewhere of about $500,000 that we hope to make up a large portion of it with contingency. But then we'll be coming back and visiting with the council once we've tied that down for a budget amendment. But tonight is the contract with CERC to move forward with the project. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Well, I do have a question. You mentioned that excluded in the expenses for the building is the design fee, which has a separate contract. And I'm
Correct.
just wondering what price point are we at with the design company?
I mean, as far as how much was their contract?
Yes.
It was approximately 363,000. And that's, so tonight is the phase 2, if you will, of the CMGC contract with CERC to move forward with the project.
Okay. Other questions, comments from the council? One thing I did fail to mention is that our city manager, Tim Tingy, is going to be a little bit late. He had some another conflict, so he should be here fairly soon. So
Another question I would have related to the GMP is there a time, have they committed to build this within a certain time frame or guaranteed date for completion?
That's a good question. We have a 12-month construction period on this. And we are pushing them pretty hard to meet that 12 months.
When does that begin?
As soon as we sign the agreement, we'll move forward.
Great, thank you.
Matt, may I make a comment?
yeah,
First, I want to thank you for the update and letting us know where we are on this. And I appreciate you making sure that timeline for construction is held as tight as possible. You know, that's where we start to see some of those price escalations as the cost of goods starts to go up and things like that, depending on, you know, what happens in our economy. So I really appreciate that you're keeping a watchful eye on that. And I look forward to your continuous notification of things as they come up, because any of these construction projects, things do come up, and I'm glad we have some semblance of a contingency there. But anything we can do also to mitigate any unforeseen costs there, but really appreciate that as well. But thank you so much for keeping us updated.
Thank you.
any updates from Rocky Mountain Power?
Once again, we have on Rocky Mountain Power, there's two things happening. We're required to put in a conduit and a couple of boxes before they'll move the poles. Part of that is in the electrical portion of this. So once we move the pole, once we get those buried and they're ready to move forward this week in burying those, we can get on a schedule with Rocky Mountain Power. And they have told us that we can get on their schedule for this month. So, but we're gonna also move forward with the project. We just can't go vertical underneath their line, so we can start doing the site work and prepping things while they're moving the line.
Okay, well, great. If there aren't any other questions or comments, we'll consider that action item later in our business meeting tonight. The last legislative item for tonight is item 6.5, consideration of resolution 2023-24, which is approving entry into a development agreement with Ivory Development. And I'm gonna have our Community and Economic Development Director, Mike Johnson, tell us a little more about that.
Thanks, Mayor. We talked about this at the last work session. This is the development agreement for the Dover Hill Drive subdivision property. Ivory is closed on their acreage on that property now for their private development. This agreement just ensures that the deal that's been negotiated of the city paying the same purchase price as was originally communicated, and then Ivory building the park to the city's satisfaction occurs within 2 years from the date of the pre-construction meeting for the first phase of Ivory's development, which they're pushing. They just resubmitted plans this afternoon. They're pushing hard to get to that point. So the agreement does not supersede any of the development standards or requirements that have already been imposed by the Planning Commission, Park Trails and Open Space Committee, or the Architecture Commission. This just ensures that Ivory builds the park in a timely manner and then preserves that pavilion, and any damage caused to the pavilion is repaired by the end of the park construction.
And they're still gonna move forward in a 2-phase.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
phase one, you'll remember, is the 4 lots that front on Dover Hill Drive on the west portion of the property. Phase 2 will come at some later date, which is on the east side of the park.
Okay. Questions, comments?
So do they have a completion for phase 2, or the park is just 2 years from the starting of the first?
Park is 2 years from phase 1. The subdivision plat is, they've split it. They've gotten approval for both phases, but the only
So
thing
it's
they've
just a matter
submitted is phase 1. So we've tied everything with the park to phase 1 because phase 2 is a little more uncertain.
Perfect.
And then we're on track to close on the park property in a couple weeks.
Okay, so this action item tonight will be the approval of the development agreement with Ivory. Okay. The last item for tonight will just be the consent calendar approval of the minutes for our meetings on April 18th.
Well, I sent back just a couple.
Yes, I received all changes.
I read that, I was like, that doesn't even make sense. And while that may be my fault, I don't think that I said, so hopefully we got those cleared
I'll
up.
make the
Thank you.
corrections.
Yeah, no problem. So we've got a busy schedule here under staff reports. We've got 7 different items to discuss. So we are going to start with our spring runoff preparation. So we'll have our Assistant Police Chief, Paul Brenneman, and we'll rely on Matt Ship as well to kind of give us an update of where we are and the important issue we're facing in spring runoff. Which, by the way, I'm pretty happy how it's going so far.
So are we, to be, that's an understatement, sir. A couple of quick things, Paul, next slide, please. Matt's doing it even better.
No, Paul was on.
A couple of quick things. This is the current flood watch that Salt Lake County puts out, or the National Weather Service puts out. You can see everything's green with except for the yellow on the backside. We'll watch this. There's no alerts right now that affect us. We see all kinds of reports of flooding on the news media, but remember, that's the news media, not the channels that we pay attention to. Next slide, please. This is precipitation forecast for the next 1 to 7 days. You can see that we're in the green, which is not a good thing unless you're wanting the precipitation. Next slide. This is the 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook for our specific areas. So we're in that green belt, the light green belt, which is what we want to be if we can't be in the gray belt. So Paula, next one. This is above normal temperatures. So we're near normal or below normal for the next 6 to 7 days, which is just what we want. Go ahead, Paula. These are your 30-day forecasts. You've seen these before. We are right in the middle there where it says equal chances to be above and below. So next one, Paula. This is the water equivalent percent. These are inches of water or percents of inches of water up in the mountains above us. 248 is Big Cottonwood Canyon. 174 is Little Cottonwood Canyon. Historically, Little Cottonwood's always been our issue. But once again, big can have issues, but it's short-lived in our city because of the short distance it is here in the city, so.
So I don't know if you were gonna talk about this, but so is this the comparison to a 2011? So I
So
saw
this is
yesterday.
historically, not 2011, historic.
Okay, so we're less than normal. Sorry.
No, more than normal.
Okay, I saw a report yesterday that snowbird is 2 inches less than where we were in 2011.
It is, and that's what I sent out. So once again, we hear about these, monumental snow numbers, but if you compare them to 2011, we're actually less water content today than we were in 2011 on the same day.
At the same day.
Fairly
At the
close.
exact
couple
same
inches
day.
less,
We're
pretty
within
close.
2 inches, which on a 72-inch scale is not a
Over
lot.
the last 2 days, temperatures being up, the stream flows have tripled. So all it takes is one shift and we could see that go bye-bye.
Well, it'll go up and down. This is exactly what we want. We were on a call with Kate Monson for Solid County Flood Control last Thursday. We want to increase. We're at 154 cubic feet per second on Little last night, and we're at 254 last night on Big Cottonwood. He says we need 350 to 450, and it'll easily handle that. So that's where we need to be or want to be.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Paula, next slide. This is your reading from last night or today on Little Cottonwood Creek. As you can see, there's peaks and valleys, but we're well below that yellow line, which is bank full. That doesn't mean it's capacity. That just means bank full. Flood stage on this one is 715. We're at 154. We're a long ways from that issue right now. Go ahead, Paula, next one. This is big. Big was at 254 last night at midnight or around midnight. Once again, it's at the 700 cubic feet a second for flood.
That's probably the highest reading we've had though, right?
Year to date, yeah, but we need more of this. We don't need less, and this doesn't worry us at all. We need more.
Yeah.
It needs to come down.
You got that yellow line and stay there for a few weeks.
Or above the yellow line. Realize that yellow line is 260. What we need is 350. So we need to be above that yellow line. So, all right, next one, Paula. You want to handle this one, Matt, or you want me to?
I can take
This is the heavy lifting that's been done.
So things that have happened over the past few weeks, I'll kind of go over this in my quarterly report as well. But we did about 3 weeks of residents coming in and filling bags at the public works yard. We have stopped that program right now. We've seen our participation wane off a little bit, so we felt like this was a good time. We have quite a few, I'll finish up here. We have had local church events, St. Thomas More, some LDS churches, where they have had large events. In a couple of those locations, we've got 10,000 bags, 9,000 bags, and what have you located throughout the city, down on Creek Road, down around 1500, St. Thomas More up the street on Creek, and then up on top of the world, we have about 8,000 bags roughly estimated. We count them, really eyeball them, so take it, but around 8,000 bags that are up there that residents have helped with and done. I shouldn't say helped with, actually done. And we have 2 more events coming up this next week and I think they're both this week. But the future events, once again, churches will be bringing in volunteers to do that. So to date, we have about 84,000 bags, 83,000 bags that have been filled. At the yard, we have 10,000 that are sitting in reserve for deployment wherever we need to take them. We've deployed bags at crossings on Deaf Smith throughout there, just in case it does breach one of those culverts. We can start directing the water down the streets in a quick fashion and then respond with these 10,000 bags. We have, like we said, around 11,000+ bags at different churches throughout the city. And then, we talked about the deployment there. And then right now we have approximately 32,000 bags sitting at the yard that are not filled with sand there enough that we can fill them. If something does occur, then that would be where Paul would bring in the volunteer program to move quickly and start filling those bags and deploying them. But we feel like we have quite a few that will help us out in doing that. So it's been a great effort.
Beautiful.
In 2010, when we had all the flooding problems, we stood up the emergency sandbag filling. We maybe filled 20,000 bags with all that flooding. You've got you got over four times that right now that have been filled and either deployed or ready for deployment. So I got to give a shout out to my volunteers. This is not something I did. This is something that they brought it together. They coordinated, they filled the bags, they've delivered bags. They've just done a great job. Our volunteer group in the city is amazing. So
You have a steering committee for emergency management folks around the city, which do an amazing job.
yeah, I couldn't do it without them, Mayor. You've sat on that committee, so you know what we're about. So it's a volunteer ground up organization. That's the way we run it. So let me go over this one. Public Works is actively monitoring every or twice a day minimum every one of our road crossings. Ran into those guys today. In fact, I was following them. They gave me dirty looks for most of the time until they figured out it was my truck. So, but they're up there every day checking on it. And that includes the weekends. When they're not doing it, Matt and I are doing it. So we're maintaining and watching that. They're also, the stores of materials are the critical part. Sand's hard to come by, the special sand. I've learned something this year. I didn't realize there were special sandbag sand. So, but they're
What makes
maintaining
it
those stores.
special? I'm just curious.
You'll have to ask Matt.
It's a finer sand, so it's pliable. When it gets wet, it doesn't. Some of the sand at some of the different pits, it has materials in there. When it gets wet, it just becomes hard and you can't work with it. Some won't say concrete, but it does become very hard to work with and it's wet. So this is the sandbox sand, very pliable, fine material that easy to load and it can get wet.
So I have 6 emergency management districts in the city. Each one of those districts has agreed to keep a list on hand. All I have to do is contact their coordinator and they'll drop a line to those people. I can say I need 30 or 60 people and they will send them to the location. Those events, if we need them, will be run by me, myself, and Public Works. It won't be a volunteer effort. It'll be a city effort at that point in time, but we've got facilities around the city that we can utilize to do that. I have asked the supervisors in the police department to report any instance of flooding. It doesn't matter if it's a stormwater issue. It doesn't matter if it's a water line break. It doesn't matter if it's runoff. They're going to report that so that Matt and I can talk about it and make sure that we're addressing it in the most appropriate manner. We want to get ahead of it, not behind it, or have to respond, after the fact to a runoff issue. We have a drone flight program that my guys are monitoring every couple of days. They're flying the creeks and providing me with some information about what's going on in the creeks. It's new to us, so that program, we think it's going to be valuable, but we're still working our way through that to see how we're going to utilize it. But if we have a situation that pops up, we can put that drone in the air. It has infrared capability, so at night it can give us a good picture of what's going on as well, instead of putting boots on the ground. The big deal today, and if you'll, Paula, go one more slide. This is the muscle wall we've talked about in the past being installed at the Truewood Care Facility. Basically what these are, they're big jersey barriers that are specially designed. They fill them with water and then they supplement the bottom of it with sandbags. There's 300 foot of that wall that's going in today. And that will help protect that critical facility on its Union Park and about 7400 South, give or take. So
Did this facility have issues in 17 or just 11?
So we had it in 2010 with that facility. They had it in 2011 as well, and 2017 a little bit.
Yeah.
What it is, it's a drainage issue out of their back parking lot.
Yeah.
So when the river reaches a certain height, it back flushes into that parking lot. So this won't help that issue, but it will help if we run it out of the banks, because they've got several low spots there as well. So, but this will help. If you go to the front page of the landing page for Salt Lake County Flood Control, you'll see this facility and sandbags about 4 foot tall back in 2010. So that's what we have for tonight. Questions, comments?
Oh, I have a few. I want to really commend the magnificent work that you all have done. I mean, it's so evident throughout District 4, the staging of the sandbags, as you said, in those strategic places. I was up at the Top of the World Ward House on Saturday, and the group that was there, it was so well organized. It was as well organized as your public works lot. I've been to, it's just so impressive. I want to recognize Christy Phillips. She's one of 2 women there in that area that are the captains, I think they're called, and the way they had it set up, it was truly incredible. So I do want to say that I know we're also cognizant of erosion challenges, although our Cottonwood Heights community, even though there's a lot of steep embankments and there's some nervous residents, hopefully erosion isn't going to play in on some of the, again, those steep embankments. I know you talked to Bob Jacobs, one of my constituents, and I thank you for that. So I want to thank all of your staff and your committee, Paul Brenneman, as well as Matt Ship's department, for being so responsive to residents. It's brought a lot of comfort. I think, each of the districts has their unique geographic features, but certainly that easterly edge of Cottonwood Heights is a kind of scary place at this time, and so far, so good.
It is ground zero for flooding in the city right now. We're aware of that. We need to get that mid-level snow off the mountain. A couple of things I would tell you is we can have some issues. There's no doubt about that. We're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. Big and little aren't our problem. Won't be for another 3-4 weeks, depending on what the weather looks like. Weather's looking good, but ultimately, once we get past Deaf Smith and Ferguson, I'll sleep a lot better at night. I'm highly confident that Big and Little can handle excessive loads of water. I just worry about Deaf Smith, but we think we have a good plan. Matt and Danny have put together a great plan, in my opinion, to address those issues should they pop up. So no news from Matt and I. If you don't hear from us, it's because there's not an issue. If you do hear from us, then yeah, you've got us concerned. So we'll continue to do what we do and check on things as we go. So
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, perfect. I want to echo those comments too. I'll commend staff, which has been unbelievably prepared in almost every situation that, I've had questions and driven with Matt to some of these locations, which was great. And so thank you. I think our community speaks for itself with the volunteers and those that have come to that sandbagging number is unbelievable. I don't know if there's another city anywhere that's done something like that. And we have amazing people. So thank you. One thing that I do want to emphasize, and we can do this on social media, but I think there's been 2 deaths in waterways so far already. One, a 2-year-old child in the Provo, and I shouldn't say deaths, and then one that is still missing since yesterday in the Weber woman. And so we have to let our residents know they have to stay away from these creeks.
Mayor, can I speak to that just
Yes,
briefly?
absolutely.
One thing I forgot to mention was we've been working with Lindsay to get a mailer out. I talked to Tim again today, and that'll go out shortly. And it's basically going to be short, concise, and the first thing it's going to lead with is stay the heck away from the creeks.
Yeah.
I can't emphasize enough. Keep yourself, your family, your pets out of the creek. And if somebody goes in, do not go in after them. You will not come out. And usually it's the responder, the person jumping in to try and save, that doesn't come out. So please stay away from the creeks.
Yeah, 2 is too many already. So whatever we can do to let our residents know is appreciated. Thank you. Great report. Any other? Okay, item 2 or B rather is a sustainability priority. So we're going to invite up our senior planner, Samantha Silhorst, and the associate planner, sustainability analyst. Ian's here. Ian's going to handle it. Okay.
Sustainability first. He's going to take this one.
Okay,
I'm here if there are questions about past projects, but.
Perfect. Well, we're excited to hear from Ian. No pressure, Ian. It's your first time.
Can I interrupt him and ask questions?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want your feet in the fire.
I'll share my screen here. Okay, looks like it came up all right. So yeah, thanks for carving out this time for the priority projects. I'll just get started. I'll go through each of the projects, and then if you have questions at the end, just let me know and I can try to answer them. I've got Mike here, I've got Sam here as well, so should be good. Okay, so just a bit of background. In the summer of 2021, we, along with Mill Creek and Holiday, adopted the Interlocal Sustainability Action Plan. I'll refer to that as ISAP throughout the presentation. It serves as a guiding document that outlines the intents of the city that pertain to sustainability. There's a section in the ISAP titled Recommended Use of Action Plan, and it guides us as staff to make regular recommendations on specific sustainability priorities for our city. So that's why we're here today. If you'll recall, in January of this year, we introduced 10 conceptual priority projects to the city council. They were kind of a lot more abstract than what we're presenting today. So you discussed this at your retreat in January, and we received the direction to refine these concepts down to specific policy proposals. So we refined these initial 10 concepts into 5 recommended sustainability projects for the upcoming year. We are requesting today that you guys review these 5 projects and then provide feedback to us on which projects to proceed with, whether they're on this project or if it's something else. Any proposed or preferred adjustments to projects that you might have. There's a few projects where there's a bit of wiggle room regarding scope. And then any further requested research that you'd like us to conduct as well, we're happy to. Following that direction, we are happy to ensure that the projects that you've selected are prioritized, and we recommend that you consider them for funding and implementation. So I'll just go through each of them now.
If I may, and could you, for the benefit of the council members and perhaps those that are in the gallery, how do you define sustainability for our city?
I think it's a pretty broad concept, so it's hard to nail it down to like a single sentence, but I guess focusing on the environment, prioritizing our environment, and I suppose enacting policies and programs that I guess allow us to continue living in the place that we love. Being responsible environmental stewards does that. And so that's kind of a focus for these 5 projects today.
Does it include financial viability? What is sustainable related to our environment here in Cottonwood Heights, both the hard and the natural. So when you talk about environment, does it include air, water, and soil? And,
Yes.
and the long-term financial viability is maintaining it with the stewardship that we want.
Yes, certainly. Yeah, I think the financial viability of these programs is really important too. And I think you'll find that in each of these 5 programs, they kind of vary quite a bit in the cost, so to speak. We're trying to recommend things that we consider to be more affordable and pretty simple yeses, and then some that do require a bit more of a cost component. But I think we tried to select things that are a bit more reasonable with regards to cost here, because that is a component of anything related to sustainability. So I'll just go into the first project we're proposing today. That's to continue to fund our Mountain View Park pollinator garden. So each of these projects I've listed the ISAP reference and then the proposal. And then on the next slide, I'll go through the proposed timeframe and the proposed budget. So our ISAP reference correlates pretty directly with this proposal. So that's to promote the use of native, non-invasive plant materials along with pollinator-friendly species and prioritize their use for city-initiated projects. So our proposal is to basically do that. We're recommending funding and facilitating pollinator-friendly landscaping on the entry hillside of Mountain View Park, right off of Fort Union Boulevard.
This would be considered a continuation of that, right?
Yes.
Because we've already done.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
It's already been commenced. We have a consultant that we're working with. This is just a continuation.
Okay.
Yeah. So this would involve refurbishing a pretty popular park within the city, a very public facing park. It would also accomplish our Parks, Trails, and Open Space Committee's goal of providing a pollinator park within our city. And then, of course, it serves as a great opportunity to educate our residents about both pollinator-friendly species and water-wise landscaping, of which pollinator-friendly species often are. So the time frame for this, it's great that we have some foundational work already complete. We have a consultant again, but we do estimate allocating about 12 months to complete this project, and that would include finalizing planting plans, selection of a landscape contractor, continued coordination with our PTOS committee, and then plant delivery and installation. So the funding that was calculated for this, but we recommend allocating about $25,000, and if costs increase beyond that, we would return to discuss with you. The planting cost, which Sam very painstakingly estimated, is just under $14,000. The labor cost that's estimated is about $10,000. And then we're estimating about $1,500 for signage, so people know what they're looking at.
Can I ask you, Scott, so do we already have any of these items budgeted?
Well, this one we don't, I'm not familiar with the other ones, so I don't know
Okay,
for
so
sure.
this one is not in our
Not
current
current.
year. Okay.
So that's that proposed project.
And I believe that the thing that's currently budgeted is the continued participation in the Community Renewable Energy Program. That's not included here because that's an ongoing program. So these would be in addition
Okay.
to that item.
So The next one we're proposing is one that actually doesn't involve really any cost to us at all. Sustainability code updates. So this would be a zoning text amendment. We're proposing updates regarding EV readiness and bike parking. Our ISAP references this in a couple different areas. In our development section, consider requiring amenities like solar infrastructure and EV chargers during the development process, or rough-in connections for these amenities to be added in the future. And then our transportation section says prioritizing and providing a diverse array of transportation options can reduce local air pollution, improve public health, and even provide cost savings. So those are some of the benefits of this. The proposal is that we'd research and prepare an EV-ready ordinance and bike parking ordinance for new commercial and multifamily developments. An EV-ready parking stall is one with all the wiring work completed, along with like a junction box. It would just lack the actual charging equipment, like you see in that picture there. So I'll speak more about the reason why
We
EV-ready stalls are.
define multifamily.
Mike.
Yes, just, it would be any multifamily
I
project.
mean, a twin home or a.
Yeah, I think the intention here is for single family homes and owner occupied homes. They will have the option, they can make the investment in their home to install EV ready, equipment. For residents that may be renting their home, they may not have that option and they want it. So this would target the higher density new developments where there's, communal parking areas to make sure some of those are charger ready. Because they can't go just make the investment and install a charger if they want to. They're relying on a property owner or manager to do that.
Okay. Would we define that in the ordinance?
That would all be defined if this moves forward, yes.
To say, when Wasatch Front, it's a maximum of 4 units. Goes down to what is serviceable, so.
Yeah.
And that may be a good break point.
So the timeframe that we're estimating for this project would follow what's typical for a ZTA, for a zoning text amendment. We're estimating roughly 6 months would be needed. That would be to continue our research on this and get more into the nitty-gritty. And then obviously to prepare a draft ordinance, to publicly notice it, to present it in front of planning commission and city council, and then to revise it if necessary, and of course, for you to adopt it. No funding would be needed, but we did look into the cost impact to developers on this. We did find, based on a study from San Francisco about 5 years ago, it's about 3 to 4 times as expensive to retrofit an EV stall into a parking stall, which doesn't have any wiring, than it is to install an EV charger in an EV ready space that's wired for it. And then simple bike racks are pretty affordable for developers, range from about $400 to $800. We see with a lot of like newer multifamily housing projects that are advertising luxury housing, they have oftentimes like indoor bike storage rooms that are very complex and more expensive than that, but bike racks are pretty affordable, and that would be really up to the developer to see what kind of level of service they'd like to provide for that amenity. So that's this proposal.
Did you say we've made estimates on cost to developers?
For EV stalls, there was a study done in San Francisco. It's before inflation and everything, but I believe like the cost for installing a charger into an EV ready space was just under $1,000 per space. But to install EV charging infrastructure to a space that didn't have any wiring is about $4,000. We would look more into that if this was something you'd want us to prioritize, but that's the research we have today.
Okay.
So our third priority project that we're proposing is to facilitate a tree planting event. In the landscaping section of our ISAP, it says support programs which highlight the importance of trees and provide resources for implementation. So our proposal would be to host a tree sale event. Staff would place a competitive bulk order of trees, order these trees at a steep discount from what you'd get if you were just buying a tree at your local nursery, just a single tree. And then we reserve a small number of these for the city's own use to obtain Tree City USA designation. Some of the other benefits of this would be that residents could purchase these trees at a steep discount. It would also further the city's goal of enhancing our tree canopy. And then, of course, all the benefits that come with planting trees. It would cool down our city streets with shade, and it enhances curb appeal. Everybody loves trees, so this would be.
May I ask on this one, one of the things in my district, we have Golden Hills Park, which at one time had a whole row of trees that along the east side of Wasatch Boulevard for the length of Golden Hills. I actually was counting all the tree stumps. I don't know how many years ago that they were cut down or who cut them down. They're probably, they may be in UDOT right away. I don't know, Matt, you're nodding your head, you're
UDOT,
nodding your head, yeah. And so I'm wondering if in conjunction with this tree planting event, and I can check in with my constituents and see how they feel about it, but I'd love to have this targeted to further enhancing trees along that eastern side of the park that would greatly improve the aesthetic experience of Golden Hills Park. So that's something I'd love to interact with you more on, unless any of the council members object to that. I think it would be, you know, because I don't know if anything has advanced with, I know Danny Martinez mentioned to me, I think it was late last year, that the Park Services Department might, and again, I don't know if PTOS committee has discussed this, but you know, the needs for the various parks. I mean, they're all different. Not all of them are on a busy arterial, but Ferguson Park, I know a lot of the Chinese elms were left in place to help shroud and shade, you know, but again, the noise of SR 210 Wasatch Boulevard is really a challenge to both of those two parks to really enjoy them. So I just want to go on record. Does anybody on the council have a problem with you know, making the event one that could, you know, we could, or maybe the community would organize that they would go and buy the trees and show up at the park. I mean, it's something we're not going to determine tonight, but I'd love to have that explored.
Yeah, Ian can jump in. I'll just say to get Tree City USA designation, we would need to set aside a certain number. I think they can be planted anywhere in the city. Council could certainly weigh in. And parks are a good place. We did one in Mount View a handful of years ago. And then the rest are then sold to city residents, and they can use those for their own personal use.
So is the designation as simple as planting a certain number of trees?
Sorry, say that one more
Is
time.
the designation just as simple as planting a certain number of trees?
Sam, do you know?
I'll just come up so that my voice is in the microphone because I want to shout. So the Tree City USA designation is something we've looked at in past years. The main reason we haven't done it yet is that allocation of tree spending. We would have to look, Matt's an expert on this program, honestly, because he's done it in past cities. The other criteria, last I checked, we did already meet. So it would be a great way to finish that off and get that. It's honestly a pretty low barrier to entry for that designation, but it's a good honor to have. And this is a great project because it ticks off a bunch of different things.
So the basic cost to the city to launch this is.
We've got it on the next slide, actually.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, I will say I've had a number of constituents ask me, isn't Cottonwood Heights going after Tree City designation? So they will be thrilled to hear this. Great,
Yeah.
kudos.
We think this would be a really great program. We, as far as the time frame goes for this, we would estimate about 9 to 12 months. And it would kind of conclude with a tree planting event next spring during planting season. So this would involve just obtaining folks for bulk orders from local nurseries, coordinating with our communications manager on public outreach for this, because we imagine it would be a pretty popular event, and then organizing logistics for a pickup date next spring. As far as funding goes, we'd recommend ordering a full truckload of trees from a local nursery, and the estimates for that are about 35 to 55 per tree. It would depend on species. For a whole truckload, that would be about $7,000 to $11,000. And then for those trees that we would resell to the public, the pricing would vary depending on our calculation of the number of trees we would need to set aside for ourselves to reach Tree City USA designation. We would probably add like a small surcharge onto the cost per tree. We wouldn't make any profit, of course. We would try and recoup the city's investment in this. And then, of course, we would plan further to see strategically what parts of the city would need trees, like you were saying.
Does Cottonwood
So-
Heights have any nurseries?
Yeah, I was
also?
gonna say
Yeah.
exactly that.
Because
So
I
the
don't
only
want
thing that
businesses to feel that
we
we're
have
cutting
two,
them
we have a
out.
couple.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that.
Holiday City does a really similar event. And I actually spoke with their assistant city manager and she gave me the information for the nursery they use. We could look at that. We could look at a more local option. But the benefit of using a really well-established, robust nursery is they can provide that wholesale discount. So we definitely want to find one that could fulfill a bulk order of that size.
So this doesn't, we're not pushing up against any statute. I know in the transportation field, you're not allowed to compete with provide public buses that are competing with the private sector. So I'm just wondering, in terms of protecting our nurseries
Oh,
and
sure, I
their
see what you're
profits and
asking.
that's what I'm interested in. I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to cut them out of what they would normally be able to sell to our public.
Matt, did you encounter any issues with that when you did this in your former?
This program, I mean, we had, where I was doing it before, we had a very large nursery in the town. And we never ran up against this. The nurseries, the trees, I mean, it was a pre-order and there were so many trees you do per year. It's not we're gonna keep doing it year round. I mean, we order one truckload. The idea here, and I'm sorry, do you want me to?
No,
Please
please.
continue.
I'm just saying.
You're actually sustainability staff now.
Yeah, I'm the assistant to Ian, the sustainability assistant. The idea here is you're really you want to get that Tree City USA designation. It's a great designation to have. You put it on your signs. It really means something.
Yeah.
The idea here is how are you going to pay for that? Because you do have to plant so many per year. You have to have a program of inspections. You have to have these things going. And one way you can do that is, instead of increasing your budget, is doing pass-through costs with this program. So you do it annually. It becomes a thing that, I mean, where I'd done it before, it was a big event. People start calling 2 months ahead, wanting to, make sure they're there. And the first time through, you figure out really what your city needs, what kind of trees they really like. I did it one year where I ordered the wrong kind of trees one year, and I ended up planting a lot of trees in our parks that nobody wanted. So you really, once you find that balance after the first year or two, it becomes a great program, to be honest with you. I've seen success in it. And really, you're shooting for that Tree City, and then it meets your other sustainability goals as they're talking about. So as far as the program is concerned, I mean, I think it runs itself once you get it up and established.
But with,
Yeah. Sorry, I was just gonna say, I love the concept. I think it's awesome. And I would think, I would love to involve perhaps a nursery.
Yeah.
Certainly, if there are local
Nursery,
options, we would
if
go
we
there
can,
first. Yeah.
At least try to work together with them, whether or not we're buying them off of them, but making them understand we're not trying to compete.
Yeah.
They may also be interested in sponsoring the event,
Yeah.
if there's signage we need for it, or
Yeah.
if we wanted to offer some sort of they could help us plant them.
Those are good
There could
ideas.
be ways to partner.
Okay.
terrific.
Okay.
Are they both deciduous and evergreen trees? Is it a mix generally
And
now?
it depends on your community and what really sells. Your first truckload, you're kind of guessworking, figure it out. You look around and see what people have. But yeah, it's sometimes it's guess till you kind of figure out your community and what they want.
We probably researched what other communities have done.
Holiday provided me with their breakdown of what they order, and we all know the cities are pretty similar between Holiday and Cottonwood Heights, so that could be a good
No,
jumping off
and
point.
wouldn't we want to be leaning toward drought resistant?
Yeah, we
trees that would
also- we
thrive
also-
in our,
Want to make sure they're not on our prohibited tree list, so that if people were planting them near the sidewalk, we're not getting them dropping thorns or a lot of really messy berries or anything. So there would be some refining to do, but we're really excited about this project.
That's great.
This is a Tree City designation, an annual renewal designation. So to continue, you have to.
Yeah, you continue the program.
The idea is you annualize this, and then it's
It's a city event over time.
a budget neutral event as it's up and running.
I kind of imagine it similar to the water barrel program we do,
Yeah, they're.
which we've done a few years in a row. This we'd recoup our investment, so it's even, I guess, more cost effective, but we received a lot of public interest in that program. I imagine it'd be the same for this.
Well,
So,
let's hit on the rest of them and then we can finish going through questions.
Yeah.
We have 2 more to share with you guys.
so this fourth proposal is to update City Hall landscaping to be more water efficient where possible. I think it's the same ISAP reference we're using here as we used in the Mountain Park section. Promoting the use of native non-invasive plant materials along with pollinator friendly species and prioritize their use for city initiated projects. You'll probably recall we adopted a water conservation standard ordinance pretty recently. Our city hall was constructed and landscaped before that ordinance came into force. So our own city hall doesn't follow the ordinance. So we think it's a great opportunity to update our city hall and bring it in conformance and serve as an example to residents and businesses. Some of the other benefits and things this would entail, would be moving lawn from our non-active spaces here at City Hall, retrofitting irrigation to drip systems, installing water efficient landscaping and reducing city water usage, and then again, serving as a great example to residents and businesses when they drive and walk by.
Are those the areas that City Hall is not compliant? Because I know when it was designed with water consciousness in mind.
We are not fully compliant with the ordinance, which is fine because we built it before the ordinance existed, but Ian's got a helpful map on the next slide that shows some of the areas we're recommending. We're not recommending taking out all the lawn, just some of the areas that are a little bit less used.
Yeah, so I used this mapping software we have at the city to measure these sort of, I'll call them like grass boxes that we have kind of in the front plaza here, along the southern facade of the building, and then along the northeastern part of our lot. The sizes vary pretty dramatically, but it's kind of segmented and broken up, as you can see. Our ordinance states that lawn should be put, like if lawn is installed, it should be used as an active space. Should be used by kids or adult. I mean, it should be used by people. It shouldn't just be there for just solely aesthetic purposes. So I've identified these areas here, which we believe kind of meet that definition of not serving as an active space. The big retention basin we have to our west, we believe that does serve as an active space. We see kids from the high school in there from time to time. We imagine it can sometimes be a space for events. It also serves a functional purpose. So I didn't include that here in our measurements, along with the lawn that is kind of parallel with the police station. They use that for the canines sometimes. And I think that serves a retention use as well. So I didn't identify that here. So the next slide I have is the time frame and the funding. It's quite a bit higher than what you'll find for the Mount View Park, just because of the difference in what would be required to re-landscape here. For time frame, we estimate about 12 to 24 months would be needed for this project, and that would involve identifying the scope of the project and the budget. What's great about these areas being so broken up is that you could say, you know, we'd really like to focus on these plaza boxes first. We think this would serve kind of an immediate purpose in being the most visible and educating residents the most. It doesn't need to be every single one of these boxes, but when I did the financial estimates and calculations, I included every single one. So because we have these measurements here, we can certainly come to you with like a different financial calculation than what we have on the next slide. But the time frame and the financial estimates include all of them. So again, we'd identify the scope of the project and the budget, and we'd work with a contractor and consultant to plan and implement the landscaping, which would involve specifying new species, securing labor, removing the lawn, retrofitting or installing irrigation for drip, and then reinstalling soil, planting, and mulch. The funding again would depend on the scope, but we estimate about $20,000 for lawn removal, and this all includes labor, by the way. $20,000 for lawn removal, about $110,000 for planting, and about $25,000 for an irrigation retrofit. So,
if I may,
yes.
I believe it was back in January, I participated along with Councilman Bracken in a program that the ULI put together in conjunction with Brighton High School. And it was a planning exercise. And so that was so fantastic. And they gave their presentations, and we served as judges and asked them questions. And it was such a great academic exercise and youth development.
Was it with
frankly.
the Legos? Like,
No, this was the one in the chambers. Oh,
but they used
maybe
Legos to
Legos
represent their
too.
cities.
Maybe so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so this to me is such a great opportunity to work with our next door neighbors there, Brighton High School, and the teachers who are, you know, they're trying to teach students in certain class areas on these very things.
Mhm.
And something that I would like our city to really look into and look at embracing is regenerative agriculture. It's based, if you know, you're probably aware of this, but it's based on design that between the berms and the various, you know, creating the not only the surface, but multi crop, they call it in big agriculture, where you don't need ultimately even any kind of irrigation system. And I think this is such a marvelous opportunity for the students. Find out which classes, which teachers might be interested in this, and make this something that is collaborative, that these students could literally show us their designs, and the city really work with Brighton High School to make this an academic exercise. I realize there's liability issues of perhaps having the students doing all the labor. So I'm not really just trying to save money for the city. I really have thought about this a lot, with what we're trying to accomplish with our sustainability ordinance, is the nurturing and the stewardship of the generations to come. And what better way to do this? Especially if they were to come up with design things, and then we had maybe a consulting company give the thumbs up or down or whatever, but make this super collaborative. It's such an opportunity, and maybe even ULI would be willing to help, with support and putting on these events similar to what they did. I mean, I think it's so exciting.
Yeah, it's always great to work with the community in any way. I mean, I think with sustainability, we look at the environmental aspect a lot, but there's also a social aspect. And teaching people how to be sustainable, working with them to learn sustainable practices is certainly a great idea.
I'd like to hear what my colleagues think about it.
Well, I think first it would be decide which of the projects we're going.
We've got one more to go through, right?
We have one more and it's
Yeah.
free, so great news.
Let's talk
No
about that
money.
one, and then we can have a discussion.
No money for the fifth one, and it'll be a big hit.
But it kind of relates to that because it is a social proposal. And that's just to improve community outreach. So we all know, like, projects that have community engagement are a lot more effective than those without, because there's a lot more people at the table and voices in the room. So the proposal that we have for this one is that we would devote increased staff time to community outreach in 3 specific areas. Our monthly newsletter and our social media content, and also preparing and updating informational documents here at the city and those that we provide online, along with improving our sustainability webpage. This would be kind of an ongoing project with the opportunity to review effectiveness of all 3 of these efforts at future intervals that we could set up, and adjust our outreach accordingly, along with any new category we might think pertains to community outreach. We could incorporate that into this as well. So the timeframe of this is pretty open-ended. We can immediately do work and prepare content for our next newsletter and research material for future content for our social media posts as well. For informational documents, we estimate about 2 months for review and just identifying areas where we can improve those things and where we could provide those to people. And then for website maintenance, that would be an ongoing project as well, but we would target different areas over different periods of time to improve and get more people engaged in our website. The great thing is that there's no funding that would be needed for this, but we would certainly return to city council if there was any kind of outreach opportunity that had a substantial cost component that might warrant discussion that we would get, really excited about. We would come back to you with that proposal. So these are all 5 of the projects. I'm gonna.
One of the things listed in that last one be the August sustainability event, similar to what you was put on last
If
year.
that's something that's happening, we'd be happy to do like a booth or
So,
something.
yeah, we are planning on the block party again, and just like last year, we would invite groups, sustainability related groups to that again.
We've
for
shared
that
a few
outreach.
ideas actually for that already, so we'd love to collaborate if there's space for us.
Yeah. So I'll leave this slide up here. If you guys have questions or discussion, our time's probably a bit up, but we just really appreciate you giving the time for this, and we appreciate working for a city that prioritizes sustainability. So thank you guys.
Thanks, Ian. As far as moving forward, are we making decisions tonight? I guess we're kind of
I think from my
Give us some
perspective,
direction,
some of
right?
these would carry a fiscal note, and it is budget season. As staff would suggest that the council's okay with it and supportive, we move forward with at least number 2 and 5, as they don't carry that same budget impact. We can get to work on those in the timeframes we
Just want to be
present.
paid, so then we
Um,
please.
Even the tree planting event will require a budget allocation, but again, that's intended to recoup its cost, and that would be a next spring kind of thing. And then maybe some council discussion on the Mount View Park pollinator, enhancing the funding there to continue that work. And certainly the city hall.
How
project.
much of that has been done?
We've done a map. Oh, go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, so to date, we had funding to bring on a consultant to do some planting plans. So it's ready to like shovel ready if the funding comes through, where we could start doing that.
So we've got a lot of plans in place. but
Yeah,
plants in it.
We just don't
Right.
have the funding. We received a small amount of free plants through a grant that we have put into the ground, but it was small in the scheme of what we need. So
And personally, in view of that, I would rather see that one come to fruition and be completed so that it's there.
We started it.
And then we can decide if we have
don't-
an additional 25
Yeah.
to start the tree planting. I agree that's important. We just need to.
I actually like, and we can all comment, but I like 1 and 3 as priorities with for this next budget year to let's move forward with both of those. And then 4, maybe we'll have a little bit more discussion on, and some more even detail
yeah.
perhaps on,
Planning commission would have some input on that.
Well, we may also have some teachable takeaways from carrying out the installation of project 1, where that could directly relate to our experience in doing it here. So we're happy to take that direction. Again, with item 3, we think it is going to be a pass-through cost where we won't actually be taking a loss on that money. So that is kind of a good point for that one in the scheme of budget. But
Councilmember Newell.
Yeah.
Anything that you'd like to add?
No, not at this time. I really like the idea of these projects. But I think that when we're talking about any that impact the budget, we do have to do a little due diligence here. And if I understand correctly, it would be spring before any of those came back to us as a council, correct?
I think the idea is if any of these require funding, that would be put in to this year's budget.
Starting in July.
Correct.
we could carry it out.
Okay, yeah, for fiscal year. Okay,
It's a
great.
fiscal year.
Yeah,
Yep.
I have no comment on that, and I really like the direction this is going.
Great, Councilmember Burrell, anything?
Yes, well, I agree that pollinator garden, I totally support putting that over to the finish line. And I'm happy to hear that a grant was, outreach for a grant, and I am interested to learn more about what other grants may be possible to reach out for, to, make most of these a literal pass-through cost, so to speak, because sustainability is such a hot topic these days. I also agree with the tree planting event. I think, that sounds so great, and you've already mentioned that's pass-through cost.
The landscaping especially could probably seek some funding.
Yeah, we got
Options.
a grant to do the landscaping at Ferguson Park, and I can find out if we'd be limited on reapplying.
Well, and I also think that would be a good one to postpone on a bit, because the staff could still be in an investigating mode with Brighton High School and ULI and a collaboration effort over the next several months to see how that can accomplish several goals.
Yeah.
So I don't mind seeing that perhaps percolating in some way, but not costing the city any money over the course of this next fiscal year. And as far as the community outreach, I see that number 5 option as one that really shouldn't really cost the city anything. We already produce a newsletter, enhancing our website to have something about sustainability. I don't know if there's a cost associated with that. Did you see a
Just
cost
staff
on
time.
that?
No, and that's, like I
It's
said, we
not
can.
cost, it's the staff time putting
Yeah.
things together.
Yeah.
Our intention is just to proceed with this, and you may just start seeing more regular newsletter.
Yeah, I mean, I
articles.
don't really see number 5 as one that, to me, it's a gradual process that could be being developed all along, so.
So just to confirm is the direction that we have tonight, to include some numbers in your draft budget for item 1 and 3,
Yes.
and then to pursue staff time for 2 and 5. That
I'm
sound
not sure that
accurate?
it's-
Yes.
The code updates on EV ready stalls and bike parking is something you'd like to pursue.
Okay, I think we can take that direction. Obviously,
Yeah.
your budget conversations will be more formal once you get there, but we'll take that and, come back.
Perfect.
Well, thank you.
Longer term. On number 4, talk to the current chair of the planning commission as he's looking designed
Yeah.
Yeah.
back to
all
the-
of this.
Absolutely.
We'll ask him why
And
he's
he may-
asking about.
Well, it was actually a balance between having spaces that were
Yeah.
usable for other things and others. I mean, it was a mix.
Well, we'll come back maybe in a future year with
But
some
he would
research
also
on that.
know why a lot of the details considering.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great job, Sam.
That
Ian,
design.
great job.
Mayor, can I note really quick, they don't come to council very often, but I do want to acknowledge the planning staff that we have here, Samantha and Ian. Not only do they do this amazing sustainability work where we came from no sustainability program a handful of years ago to what we are now and being regionally recognized and part of, big meaningful conversations with sustainability, but they are also planning staff as well. So everything that I'm always up here yakking about, they have a hand in. We really couldn't do what we do without the staff we have. So I do want to acknowledge them.
Thank you, Mike.
Our
We concur. Thank you. Okay, item 3C is a chicken and rooster ordinance discussion, Mike. So we are gonna give you some time to talk about it, and this is gonna be highly contentious,
Yeah.
possibly contentious rather. So
Is that in our meeting packet? I'm just trying to get to
Yes,
that.
There is a memo, yes.
There is a memo.
I have most of it replicated here, so I think we'll go through most of it. There was interest expressed, I think in a public comment or a couple public comments made at a meeting a month or so ago of the council considering allowing roosters on certain properties in the city. And then I think there was enough interest, members of the council to bring it to a work session discussion. So we've done some baseline research and are here to just kind of present that tonight. Mainly, we're going to go over what the current ordinance says, what other cities are doing around us, and then what it would take to move this forward and if there's council support for doing that. So currently in our animal code, we have a chapter that's specific to chicken permits. This is separate than the domestic animals, the cats and dogs and your normal household pets. That's regulated separately. This is maybe important as well. This is also separate than livestock. We have a whole chapter for livestock in our rural residential areas. This is in its own standalone chapter, which is a little bit unique compared to other cities. But the purpose of the chicken ordinance is kind of stated there is chickens may be kept for familial gain from the production and consumption of eggs. Chickens and chicken permits are allowed and permitted on any property containing a single family detached residence. So they are not restricted to the large lot rural residential areas. They're allowed anywhere in the city. It doesn't even say single family zone, but that's typically what that's going to mean. But anywhere there's a single family detached home would be eligible upon meeting standards and getting a permit.
So
to
a
keep
twin home
chickens.
doesn't count.
Correct. Yeah. The enclosures, the coops and things like that are subject to review and approval by animal control. There's some distance and setback requirements that have to be 40 feet away from adjacent homes and setback off the property line. And then that is all inspected by an animal control officer, and then the chicken permit is issued for a maximum of 6 chickens per property. Here's the key: roosters and crowing hens are prohibited. I think the obvious reason there is in a lot of single family residential areas that could become a nuisance fairly quickly. Like I said, it's regulated separately than standards for domestic pets and livestock. And I checked this as well. There's no additional allowances in the rural residential zones and the livestock ordinance that would allow roosters separately than the other zones.
And the RR does allow.
Yeah.
What's the minimum acreage?
So in the rural residential zones, you have to have a minimum of a half an acre.
Okay.
And then you are allocated, it's like a point system. You're allocated a certain amount of points based on how much square footage you have on your property.
You're allowed 3/4 of a cow.
Well, it's not actually that far off of that. You're allocated a certain points, and then your large livestock is worth more points. Your medium livestock is less points, and then you can have small livestock, and that's the fewest points. So if you want small livestock and goats and things.
Not rats.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you want small livestock, you can have more of that. If you want horses, you can have fewer of those, but it's all based on lot size.
Okay.
We did some analysis of other city ordinances to see whether roosters were allowed. Holiday is not specified. They do have chicken keeping regulations. It doesn't say anything about roosters. I'll go over the no's. The Mill Creek, Murray, Midvale, Taylorsville, unincorporated Salt Lake County. all have fairly similar chicken ordinances to us. They do not allow roosters in residential zones.
Looks like Riverton allows them in agricultural zone.
Correct? Yep.
Sandy almost anywhere.
Sandy, while Sandy does not allow them as household pets, it defines them as farm animals. I couldn't find more specific information, but my guess is that Sandy is similar to Riverton, where if you're in a farming or agricultural zone, you could keep them
Yeah,
as
for us,
farm
that
animals.
would be, like they have to be in an RR.
It'd be a livestock, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it were allowed in Cottonwood
And the
Heights.
reason our chicken ordinance is separate is because when we had another livestock, it was 25 fowl.
Okay,
So I was in mind, it was turkeys,
Sounds right.
chickens,
yeah.
it was 25 and it was like, that seemed like a lot.
Okay. So this is just surrounding cities where they are allowed, they're almost unanimously allowed as farm animals, but not in your typical residential zones. And then some cities just don't allow them altogether. That's all I have for this. Tim wanted me to convey the public comment that was made. I think that resident's name was Alan Nielsen. He actually, his comment wanted to point out Riverton's ordinance saying, hey, why don't we consider something like this where you allow them in agricultural zones where you have larger lots. The benefits he pointed out is they help defend the hens against skunks and other predators that you typically find in those areas. So I think he was the one that initiated this request initially. The direction on this is if the council is interested in pursuing an ordinance amendment to allow roosters, we would need to do some research and work with the police and animal control to do that, to come up with some sort of reasonable standards for where roosters could be allowed. And again, I think the direction we would go is we base it on lot size, treat them more like livestock,
So what kind of lot size are we talking about?
half acre plus.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and when I had looked at it, the request came from and makes most sense to me to keep it restricted to our RR zones,
Right,
which are our iteration of what was the agricultural zone in Salt Lake County. So before all of our RRs were AG or A whatever in the county.
right.
And that's where our horses are, that's where you'll find the cows and the llamas. A lot of that type stuff. And so,
So we could put into the ordinance whatever lot size we want to allow it.
Right, we would come back with a
automatically makes
recommendation.
it the half acre.
And I don't know if Robbie's had some
Half acre
experience with this
to
in the
me
past.
is not big
I do
enough.
want to give you a chance here.
So
to weigh in.
what is the size of Alan Nielsen's property?
I don't know. I'm not sure where he lives.
It's,
I mean, only because he's the one that wants the roosters. I basically am opposed to the noise that roosters can make. I don't think a half an acre is enough
I agree.
to shield. But I'm curious why there was another gentleman from District 1 who contacted not only, I'm assuming he contacted all of us because I had at least 2 conversations with him. I'm guessing this was 4 months ago, and his request that I think we should consider if we're considering Alan Nielsen's, this other gentleman who I think his name was Nathaniel, but I haven't been able to, he never emailed. me
That
anything.
resident had
And
attached-
he was in an attached home, but he was able to meet all the setbacks and requirements that a S1 single home, family home was able, so I thought that there was some value to his point that, he wanted to teach his children about collecting eggs and the whole thing. And if he could meet the setbacks and all that, why would we have some seeming bias against people that are living in, maybe they can't afford to live in an S1 and they live in a twin home or some situation, but they can meet all the requirements of an S1. I would like the council. I thought that seemed very reasonable. Is there an appetite to consider that?
Here, we're looking for whether we move forward with.
Yes, but if we're
Okay.
Totally up to the council.
Again,
is the
that gets
answer.
to be a discussion. If we move forward, that's certainly not in for discussion. I don't know that we need to discuss and debate it now because it would come up or it doesn't come up.
Well, I'm
I'm
not,
willing to move forward with the discussion, but I would probably say we just notice it and we do keep it strictly to RR. If we're looking at something larger than a half acre minimum, then I think those residents down there should have that chance to speak. If we find out that the vast majority of them just don't care about the noise, I don't have a problem with making the change, but if we get a lot of feedback saying, don't you dare, then we need to weigh that as well.
Yeah.
How many I'd want us to look at a map to understand where in Cottonwood Heights we have congregations, so to speak, of half-acre lots.
Mhm.
To me,
This-
this is to really think about where do they abut the smaller lots? And I mean, that I would definitely want to review that before I,
The vast majority of them are along Little Cottonwood Creek, just right down now Siesta all the way up.
I would even want to notice the neighborhoods and even.
There are a couple of
allow
other
for them to
RRs elsewhere, but the
Yeah,
vast majority.
so,
is
so from
all-
staff, there's certainly concern. Let me let Robbie step in here.
Chief, go ahead.
This was assigned to a city planner and I don't exactly know how I got this, but I'm happy to help.
our zones are mostly just along Little Cottonwood.
Right. We don't have a lot of others.
So let me frame this up real quickly. This is one family, one complaint that generated this. And it was because they do have a large piece of property, but a half acre is not a lot of room. And you have the rooster making noise. It disturbed other neighbors. It got to the point where code enforcement tried to bring him into compliance, couldn't, cited the property owner. That's going through the court system. Since that time, the victims, witnesses, people who heard the noise feel some intimidation and are reluctant to testify. And then it's circled back to you. Now, Scott and I were here when we had the original discussions on this, and he's absolutely right. The reason we pulled it out of the other ordinance was because it was 25, whatever that number, it was crazy. It was a crazy number. And there was people lined up here, but 95% of them were, yeah, chickens are good. You're providing food. It's a good idea. The health department was here saying, no, you're bringing rats and things in to the community. Keep it a small number. That's kind of how we kind of got to the 6. And Scott can correct me if I'm wrong. But 6 was a real viable number because
It seemed pretty consistent with
yeah,
other
and
places.
then maybe so, not that you could share 1 or 2 with a neighbor if you chose to, but no more. And we didn't want to create such an issue or such a big ends that would attract rodents and create a whole different issue, a much greater issue to the neighborhood. Nobody said that roosters were okay in any of those properties because of the noise. You can't control them. And the argument that they're making may be a valid argument, but it's certainly when you weigh the preponderance against the health, safety, welfare, and the noise of the neighbors, it doesn't work, and you would be putting us and code enforcement into a very awkward box of getting complaints from the neighbors on a rooster that we can't do anything about, and they start very early in the morning, and you do not want to live next to one of those, I can assure you. On your argument on the people that came into compliance, that fair argument, I thought about that myself. Completely different though. They're not asking for a rooster, never did. They were just.
No, I'm not saying that they did. I just thought that when I first saw this, I immediately thought of that because this gentleman engaged me on the phone twice. I said, look, I think you have a good idea here. You have to put it through your city representative, who is Doug Peterson. But if Doug, you can let him know that, Councilwoman Ellen Burrell is interested in allowing for up to 6 chickens, in things other than S1 place, if they can meet the criteria of certain setbacks and not too close and where the coop is and all that stuff.
And if we decided not to move forward with the rooster, we could still change the ordinance to allow a single or a twin attached home to add, to be
That would be
considered the same as
a text amendment.
a text amendment, yeah.
Right.
So,
And we would support that actually.
okay.
So yeah, that's the issue. We don't get a lot of, our department doesn't get a lot of calls asking about roosters, and we do the animal licensing, so we don't hear a lot of concerns over not allowing roosters. Robbie's absolutely right there, so.
Well, my son-in-law wants a rooster and they're looking at moving to Kanab.
Yeah.
They live in Sandy, but I've been in places where there's roosters and they like to crow through the middle of the night and they're doing their thing. It's not just at dawn. So I really am just weighing in that I'm quite against the idea.
Well, that would be my suggestion. If we're moving forward, it would be definitely with the outreach to the neighbors to find out what they think. My expectation honestly is that we'd find more opposition. but
So we would need three to move forward. And I'm probably not there. It sounds like you're not with the rooster side of it. So we
Yeah, and
probably,
I'm not there either.
yeah, we don't have a consensus to move forward. The
You
rooster
have
side of it.
Washington DC, just kidding.
Other noise, there's a lot of other noise.
So, but I would be okay with considering a text amendment to allow an attached home. If we want to move forward with that. Councilmember Newell, you okay with that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. And I'm definitely on the no on the rooster. I've had one myself, and yeah, they could be quite a bit.
you banned one yourself?
Well, he saved himself from the plate because I found a farm. for him,
Okay,
so-
all right.
Okay.
I would urge him to go no further with that.
I didn't know he banned it.
Yeah, good advice. Okay, we're gonna move on. Item D, under staff reports, is gonna be a public works building contracts. We'll have Matt Ship talk about that contract.
That was the one we.
Oh, we done it already.
Yes, sir.
But we did it when we didn't need to. So, okay,
Done,
done. Perfect.
Could I ask, I'd be curious to look at the
not done.
layout real quick, just email it or something. Where it currently sits. I'm pretty sure I'm familiar with it.
Okay, I can do that.
So item E and item item E is the Butlerville Days fireworks display and drone show. So we've got Ann here, Ann Etchell, who's our culture manager, and we'll invite her up and we'll talk about these two possible contracts.
Year again to start talking about Butlerville Day contracts.
Yeah.
So what
We've
I'm
got a
bringing,
couple already.
is it what?
We had a couple already.
Yeah. So I'm bringing to you today is to an agreement with Open Sky. They are a drone show that we would like to have on Friday night. It would be Friday night, July 28th will be a little bit different. We used to do the movie in the park this year because we've got such a great deal on getting a drone show. We won't do the movie in the park. We'll do our take our stage acts all the way to 10 o'clock and then shoot. The drone show will go up right at 10. This is with music.
We've had dwindling participation with movies in the park, if I understand.
It is,
right.
it is. The two we had besides Butlerville Days last year, numbers were very, very small. It's just not the residents don't have a big appetite for it up here. Other cities are doing just fine with it. Butlerville Days still would get a nice crowd, but it was starting to slowly dwindle down. The
If you
hardest,
advertise the drone show after the live event, you may get more participation on Friday. I mean, really, I think.
the drone show.
Yeah.
Well, the
Okay.
drone show would be at 10 to 10:15.
But-
Yeah.
But yeah, well, I'm saying, if you advertise, you've got the live band and there'll be a drone show afterwards, that might get more people to be there with a band as well.
Yeah. No, the night will be larger,
Okay.
of course, yeah. And
Well, the carnival's running.
and the carnival still is going to 11, so. I think it's a great opportunity for us to get it because I was able to save about $10,000 this year just to have it. So kind of a little teaser for the year.
So details on that? How did you do that?
How did they do that?
She's hiding her magic button.
I mean, we'll take it. So yeah, anyway, however it worked out, I guess. So-
I was able to get them to other cities.
Oh, got it.
So other cities locked in and they
You
came
saw
back.
the
with the thing.
post when they did the demo up here, they
Yeah.
actually had our logo.
Yeah.
Flying up over there.
Yeah,
Was there-
our logo will be up there. I've also was able to bring in Rocky Mountain Power and Granite Construction. Their logo will be up there too. So between the two of them, it's almost paid for through sponsorships.
Great.
Saving the money on the movie in the park. So it's kind of a win-win situation for us this year.
Perfect.
Yeah. And it will be about drones shows only last about 13 minutes because that's the battery life. So about 100 drones will be up there. So I think it will be kind of a fun.
Yeah.
And it's to music and they will build the music for us too. The other one will be, the fireworks contract for the next night. It will be the exact same. We'll have stage like acts all the way up to we start the fireworks off at 10. So the same thing as last year. Price, it has increased from last year, to 15.4. They did give me 10 extra shots on top of it from the previous year. The price hasn't increased, so it's about $3,000, just under 3,000 since 2017 was when it went up to the 12.5. So we've had a really good price for quite a few years, but with the recession and everything else going on, the prices has kind of gone up for it.
Okay.
So
It's the same contractor as last year.
same contractor, Atlantis. We're going to do a walkthrough beforehand again. We work really close with the fire marshal and to make sure that we can shoot them safely. And
This is
things like
Pete's
that.
favorite night.
I love it. Good times.
That 4th of July.
And he does want to talk to you more about the the size fours.
Okay.
So the owner of Ken Lantis is really being careful this year. And so we're gonna probably have a meeting
Yeah, that works.
beforehand.
That'd be helpful.
Okay, great questions.
Yeah, I want to go back to the drone show. Well, I think it sounds like fun. I don't see that the purpose of a drone show is something I can support. I think Butlerville Days is a wonderful event. I think it's been very financially supported, and the level of staff time and volunteers is incredible. I give everybody kudos on that. But I would rather see, in a time when we know that what our citizens are telling us is they want walkability, they want safe roads. I don't see the drone show taking us in that direction, and I would like to see our dollars that are spent be spent to what our residents are telling us. I'm not aware that doing further enhancements beyond all the carnival and all the things that go on. I also, the fact that it's at 9 or 10 p.m. That may also speak to why the movies aren't well attended. I think a lot of people are done and to spend this money for a drone show is I'd rather see it spent for another film festival similar to the one that was tried out in January. Bring something like that to our community. I think would have higher value because it's both educational and it aligns with our goals of towards sustainability and that sort of thing. I'd be happy to hear what the value of the drone show is other than sheer 13 minutes of titillation or something, overseeing something in the sky. I can't support that.
Yeah, so I'm okay with it. So I mean, we're gonna be able to vote on it. So I think we'll be able to express our opinion through our vote on it as it's scheduled as an action item. But I probably would not feel the same. I would probably think it'd be a fun thing to see if the community latches on. If it's something that generates excitement and gets more people out, because the purpose of Butlerville Days is to bring communities together.
Have a good time.
And to have a good time. And I think if this adds to that, I'd be in favor of it. It'd be, it'll be something we can evaluate, I think, after the first year. But I would, at this point, would be for it. I don't know if you want to say, Councilor Bracken and Councilor Newell.
It's having sponsors in place. It is fun. Butlerville Days is that. If we are going to relegate ourselves to doing nothing but the other things, that I mean, I think we lose some of the community aspect. But I mean, there are certainly people who said, why waste your money on that? But I can also tell you, every single time I talk to youth about the youth council, or I talk to other groups, and say, have you ever been to Butlerville Days? You get a 90-95% response every single time. And the other 1 or 2 kids in the classes, they're new. So for that community building and that feeling, it's amazing, and you do a great job.
I'll just throw it out for, so this isn't this isn't something that I just came up with. This is something that I talked to the committee, a Butlerville Day committee, and they are residents, and they all agreed to move forward with this. So it wasn't something that was just for me. I definitely make sure that it's the residents that want this, not me. Do I want it? Yes, I think it's awesome, but I always take it back to the committee of residents and ask them how they feel about it. We also have staff on this, but I just take it back to the residents to make sure they're
I think if
comfortable.
we had limitless
So-
money to do everything we want to do in the city, that'd be different. I also check in with my constituents,
Right,
and those that I checked in with were did not support the idea. I'll just say that.
Great.
Okay.
Nope, I think thank you for your input, and we'll vote on that a little bit later, but thank you.
okay. thank
Appreciate
you.
your
Yeah,
expertise. So item F. So we're now gonna wake up Scott.
Yeah.
And he's gonna have probably the next hour on the floor. So we'll start with we're gonna talk about the telecom tax that we talked about in our retreat. Something that anyway, so I'm gonna actually just turn the time over to you, and then we'll discuss it as a council during the presentation.
So this is a write-up that I did several years ago and then updated it just last week to kind of get it into current time frame. So after the retreat, when there was some interest in looking at the telecom tax going forward, we looked at this. The Utah code is 10-1 part 4. The highlights of this is that it was first authorized to be collected in July 1st of 2004. The current maximum rate is 3.5%. And that was starting in July 1st of 2007. And currently, that's down a little further. So the only Salt Lake County cities not currently charging the tax is Cottonwood Heights and Mill Creek. Mill Creek is a relatively new city, probably, I don't know, 5-ish years old, something like that. Within the state, there are over 150 cities who currently charge the telecom franchise tax, and that number was an old number from a couple of years ago, so it's probably higher than that even. Currently, it is not authorized for either a township or an unincorporated area to charge the tax. You have to be an actual incorporated city. All cities who charge the tax in Salt Lake County are at the 3.5% rate. Nobody does like a portional rate. They just go to the maximum. Annual collection amounts, they are reducing a little bit as you see the cost of your phone charge, because they separate phone and data out. But if you see the cost of that phone charge declining, that will, because it's a percentage-based tax, it will decline over time. As you look at that. So our current estimate would be that we'd get about 300,000. We don't have all the data to be able to know exactly how many phones are in the city. So it's a little bit of a guesstimation on that, but that's probably pretty close. In order to implement.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
those are phones that are addressed, the building addresses in the city, is that the way that works?
That's correct. So it would usually be like a personal phone that somebody owns that who lives within the city, or a business phone that would be in the city, and it's both landlines and cell phones.
Maybe you're gonna talk about this. Oh, yeah, that's under 4. Keep going.
Okay, so in order to do this, there's steps that have to be taken care of. The city must adopt an ordinance, and in the ordinance, it must outline the tax rate. It must outline the effective date of the ordinance. And it has to be implemented the first day of a calendar quarter. So January 1, April 1, July 1, or October 1. And you then have to enter into a uniform local agreement with the state tax commission. That's basically notifying them that you're going to start to charge that tax. And then that must be submitted all to the state tax commission. It has to be more than 90 days, but not, before the beginning of the tax collection start date. And the reason for that is they put out a publication to all vendors who provide phones and other things that get taxed, so that they can anticipate collecting that tax for the period that's going to be there and put their systems into place to be able to do that. And then the state tax commission does charge a very small collection fee, up to 1.5% of the fee that's collected. And this is the rate that was currently charged at 0.65%. That's a couple years old, so that could have changed slightly from that. But they don't try and make a profit on that. They're just trying to collect their costs. So for an example, on number 4, if you had a typical single line of service with phone and data of $40 per month, and let's say that half of the $40 is for data and half's for telephone, so it's $20 for telephone. The 3.5% would be applied to the $20, and that would generate about 70 cents on that month. And annual would be about $8.40. So that's kind of the
70
the
cents a
impact.
month.
Yeah. So, and obviously you can get phone packages that are differing costs, so depending on what it is, but it's on the actual phone costs, the telecom type costs, not on other costs that could be added on, or fees or other things that could be on there. It doesn't get applied to that aspect of it.
Okay.
So that's kind of the gist of how it goes. Obviously, Shane would need to draft the city ordinance and things to be able to get that ready to go and everything. But I think it could, if we started, say, on June 1st, we could probably have it done and approved, say, by our second June meeting, and have it in place, so that we could notify the state tax commission and start to collect it, say, October 1. But if we didn't start till late into June, I don't know if we could make October 1. It might push it back till January 1.
Okay.
So. Any questions?
Yeah, questions from the council?
Well, as always, I want to go on record that I really want to look out for the people on fixed incomes. I generally am gonna say, when it comes to something essential as smartphones are to every person, every adult, and many teenagers carry smartphones. So for a household of 4 people, it's only $3 a month. It seems so minuscule to many of us. But again, like utilities and heating your house, all these things, many people are very encumbered these days. And so for an essential service such as, again, a phone, some people still have a landline as well as a phone. I mean, if you really multiply it out per household, I'd like to understand what the average household, because it seems very benign when you talk about an individual only paying 70 cents per month. But again, if you think of households, I'd like to understand what the average household in Cottonwood Heights would be, looking at paying more per month than per, I don't know if that's up to you, Scott, to have to
That
get
data
that.
isn't going to be available to us. It's gonna
But
be
we
closely
know
held by
based on the
those
population in
providers.
Cottonwood Heights and how many houses, we know what the average.
Well, household size would be phone
Yeah,
in the household.
I know, and
Phones.
everybody has phone service, right?
Well,
So
not kids, not.
my grandson's 10, he wears a phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
So-
know we've got about 33,000 residents, but we also have businesses, and that's the part that I can't even begin to tell you how many phones we have at businesses. Some businesses could be phone intensive and some businesses could not.
I'm less concerned for the businesses. I think they can absorb it. I'm more interested in households. I mean, I have residents who come to me and say they can't meet their mortgage payments. They're young families. They're looking for ways to cut and, not only create more income, but cover their many expenses that it takes to have ownership, whether it's an ownership of a condo or a townhome or a full-on, single family home. So I would like to further understand.
What was our AMI, Mike?
Or what?
AMI is, I'm gonna say it wrong, I think it was about 80,000. This most recent year, yeah.
The median income per household.
Well, we know that we have about around 10 or 11,000 households, if I'm correct. Is that about right, Mike? Off the top of your
Yeah,
head?
ballpark, uh-huh.
And so if we have 33,000 people, it's 3.3 people per household. And if every single person had a phone, you'd be talking 3 to 4 phones. 4 phones rounding up, you'd be, at 70 cents a phone, 7 times 4, is $2.80 per month. So
So the one thing to remember, the reason that this came up as an option to look at was the delay of property tax increase. So, the cities, we're experiencing inflation just like everybody else. And so, 2-3 years of this tax, whereas that property tax increase might be be able to help delay that property tax increase that would be more substantial, obviously, than this. So that was one of the purposes of considering this tax. It's a tax that literally almost every city in this county charges. So to me, that adds a little bit more validity to it. But we do not have to go forward to it, and I'm not even there to say that I am, but I am interested in Councilmember Newell's thoughts, possibly, and Councilmember Bracken as well.
Yeah, my thoughts mirror yours quite a bit, Mayor. I'm looking at the mitigation of property taxes for our residents, and then also I see this as an opportunity for the city to make sure that we're not falling behind other municipalities when it comes time to be able to have the funding that we need for other structural needs for the city and the community. And I think this is a fairly passive tax, but putting it out there and getting people to understand that we have held on to our property taxes for a very long time, and this is a huge way for us to mitigate things that may not be comfortable for others in other spaces. If you understand where I'm headed with that. So I'm really an advocate of this. And I have a huge family on a multi-plan as well. But I think that, I always go back to the kind of the Starbucks comparative. We're talking about 1 cup of coffee here for a month in what we're looking at for this payment. And I don't mean to be trite in saying that, but it's really not a significant amount of money that we're asking to in implementing this tax. But I think it's really important for us as a city to be able to do this to mitigate other instances where we may have to look at tax increases of other types.
Well, I wonder, is it a possibility to exempt people under a certain income level from this tax?
I don't think it is, right? No.
the data wouldn't be available to the state tax commission nor to the provider to be able to do all that kind of stuff. So
There,
Councilmember Bracken, I want your thoughts.
this has been bandied about since maybe not day one, maybe week one, or at least month one of the city's incorporation. As far as a compelled tax, yeah, these things are necessary. A property tax is not optional. Once it's levied, and you're due for that one way or the other. But it is like a utility. I mean, we pay our heat, we pay our, and their way that it's a cost of living. But we are also obligated by our charter to provide services. We are entrusted with keeping public safety on our roads and our homes, keeping the roads clear, making sure we're planning for the future and things like that. And for those reasons, yes, I see it as a small stepping stone that we can use to continue to do that, and keeping the some diversification in our revenue sources, so that if one thing, I mean, I was on the council during the 2008-2009 downturn where we lost $1 million of sales tax revenue. Almost just, that was a really hard hit to the budget. And points to where it does help to have things a little bit diversified. We've become more diversified since that time. Hopefully that won't happen again. We did weather a pandemic fairly well, which was wonderful. But I think there's probably a time that it will need to happen. But I'm more favorable to doing this than proposing a truth in taxation this year for 4 or 5%.
Yeah, really good thought, Scott. And I think Councilmember Burrell has a great point. We're concerned about, everybody and so taking away in more money from anybody is a concern. Anyway, so I think it's a really good discussion. Do we, let me think about this. So it sounds like Councilmember Newells would be in favor to move forward. Councilmember Bracken, you'd be in favor to move forward.
As I understand it, it is in the tentative budget that we're
Yeah, it is.
proposed tonight.
It is in the tentative budget. It is also in the tentative budget of the full annual amount, just as a demonstrative aspect. And so that would have to, in order to truly get the full annual amount, that's not gonna happen. We could get about 3/4 of it.
So would we need to have a public hearing or would that just be part of the budgeting process?
That would be, in terms of the revenue, it would be part of the budgeting process, but when you adopt the new ordinance, that would have a public hearing.
Public hearing.
But I believe, if I'm correct, Shane would have to correct if we were wrong on that, but we'd have some discussion and.
Either next meeting or the first one in June, something like that.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, yeah, that makes.
So as long as there's a public hearing that I'd like to hear, at least I'd give our residents the option to come. I think I'd be in favor of moving forward to that point then. So, yeah, okay.
I was gonna make a comment in the meeting, but
Yeah.
this is, I saw a softball up to the tentative budget. When that tentative budget gets posted out online, that's where everybody gets a chance to go through and review and look at all this stuff. And that's why we have our
Yeah.
budget hearing, and that's why we go through this process to find out, what people think.
Yeah, no, good point. Good point. Well, thank you. Good discussion. Okay, our last item, Scott, is our proposed tentative budget discussion. So
Okay.
don't stress too bad. We got 40 minutes, and so that's about perfect to get us to where we need to be.
We can make this as long or short as you want, really. But I'll mainly go over items that are maybe different and or still have final decisions that need to be made, because there's not a ton of changes from what we presented last time. Again, this is contained in the package the packet that was sent out to everybody. This reflects a lot of what was discussed both in our January city council retreat, as well as the benefits compensation and budget committees, as well as in the individual discussions that city manager Tim Tingey has had with many council members and the mayor, and discussions that have gone on with the department directors and Tim and myself. And so that's kind of where all this information kind of comes from, and we try and bring that all together. Our early indications of our budget that we're currently in, that ends on June 30th, shows that we'll probably end with about $8.1 million in ending fund balance. That is a decrease from our beginning fund balance of about $1,229,000. And that's about $1 million better than what our current year adopted budget has. That $1 million is in the form of under expend, basically, for the large part, and or maybe some revenues that are coming in a little bit higher here and there that we see.
And that $8 million is what percentage that we're trying to?
31.
Yeah, so
31.
that would represent,
Sorry, I
yeah,
should have kept reading.
31%
Okay.
of our budgeted revenues. So we're required by state to hold 5%. That would be $1.3 million roughly.
Yeah.
And then another 260. So that's $1,564,000 that we're supposed to keep on hand. In addition, we have 660 that we hold for our PTO vacations, any compensated absences that we have on the books. So there would be just under 6 million available for appropriation at the beginning of our next budget year, which is July 1st of 2023. So going forward, our revenues, most of the areas that we still have decisions to go or information that we need to get are highlighted yellow. I found one that is not, and I'll point that out when we get to it. So we have budgeted $8,234,000 for our property tax, and this includes a new growth projection of about 50,000. It'll be somewhere around there, maybe upwards of 100,000. And that's just gonna be on any new structures that are made in the city and or maybe a finished basement or in addition to a house, things like that. That create new actual property tax base. And so we'll get that final number from the state tax commission when they finish when the county finishes their assessing data and everything that they do as it goes all through that process. But that should be available by around the 10th of June is typically when it's available. Our current tax rate for our 2022 tax year is 0.001442. And the rate always declines as the values go up, and the values, we expect them to go up, so the rate should be lower than 1442 as we move forward. The sales taxes, so in 2021, 2022, we received just under 8.8 million in sales taxes. We're actually projecting 9.2 million, about maybe just a hair below that. And for our current year's sales taxes. And so we're going to put forward in this budget $9.5 million, which would be about a $300,000 gain over what we project in our current year for sales taxes. County option highway tax is budgeted in this budget at $800,000. That's $20,000, $220,000 more than we received in 2021-22, and is about $150,000 more than our current year budget. We thought that we might be in a little bit of an anomaly last year, and it looks like we're not. That's the new norm.
Right.
So. Energy use tax that's built in is $2.3 million. That's $100,000 more than our current year budget, and that's similar to our current year projections. This again comes from either natural gas or electricity sales, and so as their rates that they charge for their product goes up, then we see a little bit of a reflective increase in our collections, even though our rate stays consistent. Fee in lieu of property tax. This is on our vehicles that we get. As you pay an age-based tax on your vehicles, this gets distributed based on the same distribution as the property tax up above. We built in $300,000 in this budget, and that's actually a reduction by $125,000. We've actually been seeing this dip a little bit. One of the kind of bad things, if you will, say that what happens is as we don't increase our taxes and other entities do, typically school districts do increase their taxes a little bit more regularly to stay up with inflation, is we lose out a little bit and we see a shrinkage of our fee in lieu of. And that's exactly what's kind of been happening over the last several years. And so that net revenue for us is down a little bit. Franchise taxes this is our cable TVs in the budget at $300,000. And that's the same as our current budget. We've seen our collections be about maybe 320 to 325,000, and then it's starting to dip down, maybe be about 312 or so thousand at the end of this year. But as people wean off of cable TV and or as your cable gets split again into cable TV versus data, you see this revenue shrink a little bit each year. As we move forward, it's not huge shrinkage, but it's small shrinkage that we tend to see in that. Transient room tax. This year we are budgeting that at $175,000. That's an increase of $75,000 over our current year budget, and that matches to our recent projections. As we've talked about the Canyon Center Hotel that's new up there, as well as our existing hotels. This is a good revenue source for us that's starting to get a little bit larger than it has been in past years.
Hey, Scott, sorry.
Yeah.
Just to back up a couple of bullet points. So
Yeah.
Wouldn't the fee in lieu of property taxes based on vehicles be the number of vehicles? So why would that be going down? Would that
So
be
what happens is,
fewer vehicles are being registered?
well, what happens is the state collects that fee and it puts it into a pool. And then they split it out based on the property tax distribution through the whole state. So an entity that's continually growing and or increasing their property tax rate, whichever they happen to do, is going to see more of those revenues run over into their pockets than an entity that's either staying about the same and or the I lost my train of
Their
thought.
gross short share of all property taxes go down.
Yes, because you're not doing a tax increases. So if
Little bit like
everybody did
sales
tax
tax.
increases in lockstep, you wouldn't see as much erosion of that. You'd probably see more maintaining it or slight increases. But we're losing out to say, I'll use a city like Harriman. Harriman's probably seeing that go up, exponentially out there.
Their
Where we're
property tax
not.
is no longer
Yeah.
cultural, it's being.
And so it's kind of a weird phenomenon
Yeah,
that does happen
okay.
with that.
Got
If
it.
you're a very growing community or you're a community or a district, because you've got to remember school districts are in this.
Yeah.
That's increasing taxes, then you're going to see more of those funds flow into your organization.
Yeah, got it. Perfect.
So-
Thank you.
Yep. Let's see here. And then the telecom franchise tax, we've got that in here. We put it in at the annual $300,000 amount just because that way it's very clear to the residents. So that if that were to be adopted, that would be the annual that we would expect. We will not be able to get that annual amount in there because we've missed the deadline to get the full annual. But we could get about 3/4 of it, and that would mean we'd lose, about $75,000 off of that if we went through the year. So all of that means that we'd have a total change of about $1,250,000 increase over the current year budget for these tax type in revenues, which is a 6.1% overall increase. So it's predominantly influenced by the 700,000 in sales tax revenues increase, 300,000 in the new telecom tax, 100,000 in the energy use tax, 150,000 in the county option highway sales tax, 75,000 in the transient room tax, and 50,000 in the projection for property tax increase. Less a reduction of about 125,000 in the fee in lieu of property tax. So moving on to some of the other revenues that we're projecting changes in, the Class C roads funds, we're recommending a budget of 1.4 million, and that's an increase of 150,000 more to be in line with what we're seeing reflected in our current budget year. We thought that last year might be a little of an anomaly, but we're seeing that hold, and this is based on the gallons of fuel that are sold and then distributed back through the state to us. And then we also removed a $2 million grant that came from the American Rescue Plan Act, state and local fiscal recovery funds. And that's the second year that we received that same amount of money, $2,002,000. And we're removing that because that program is obviously over at this point in time. Right. So total revenues are budgeted at $25,352,000. And that represents a decrease of $602,000 from the current budget, or a 2.3% overall reduction. But if we take out this $2 million, reduction, that's kind of not normal, if you will, then what we're seeing is an increase of 1.4 million in I'll call that our base revenues. And so that's about a 5.8% increase on those same base revenues. So that's kind of where we are from a revenue perspective. In the expenditures, again, we're trying to keep this in line with our current 5-year plan. And then, any exceptions or anything, to be reviewed with the budget committee. And then individual changes, I'm going to go over them, but I think we've actually been able to be a little bit better than our 5-year plan, mainly due to our revenues being strong and our expenditures being keeping a lid on them, if you will. So there is a market adjustment in here that's included at a cost of $92,000. And that's just as we do market surveys and we realize, oh, this one that's graded here needs to be slightly up here. And then slotting somebody in, they might get an increase anywhere between 1% and maybe 6%, with the average being more like 2 or 3% for most people in that area. Cost of living, a note on this is that the cost of living needs to be discussed and evaluated comparative to other cities. What is included in here right now is 5.5%. And to note that 5.5% equates into $557,000. So if for every percent, it's a right or near $100,000 if we make a change in the COLA. So
May
keep
I add
that
something?
in mind as we go forward.
Yeah, so the 5.5% comes from the budget committee. As far as, that's where we came with that group. Compensation was discussed, but I will say that this is all, as Scott mentioned, we have that note in there because we know that we need to reevaluate this. I talked at the last meeting that I met with city managers down at the city manager conference. I have more meetings tomorrow with them. Most in the Salt Lake Valley, most of the cities are looking at in the range of 4%. Some are 7%, some are 5%, but most are in the 4%. I'll know more tomorrow when I meet with all the city managers because they should be doing their budgets this week as well in the tentative budget. So just know that that's a placeholder, recognizing that there is a lot that we need to discuss, and I'll have more comparisons even after tomorrow.
Merit is where you move through whatever range you happen to be in to recognize people for their longevity, their knowledge base, other things along those lines. And the average is a 3.62% step for those that are eligible for it. If you're at the top of the range of that range, you're not eligible for an increase. So taking into account all personnel, the average is about 2.5% for anybody that is in that range to get that. And the impact of that is $228,000 for that overall impact. Health cost, we're at 6%. It had started at 11.2%. We pushed back, I think it was 2 or 3 times to the entity, and we're ended up down at 6%. It was initially going to cost us about $105,000, but at the 6%, we're at $56,864. And again, dental has no costs. We were initially projecting $50,000 between health and dental, so we're very close in that. Utah Retirement System has proposed no changes in their preliminary rates. They haven't published their final rates, but they typically don't wander off from what their preliminary rates are. And so, and then the year-over-year annualization of employees, this is as employees leave us to go elsewhere and we bring somebody in. Oftentimes we bring somebody in at a lower scale of pay. And we are seeing savings of about just under $200,000 over what was budgeted in our current year budget from that. So that was a really good savings that particular year. So taking into account all of those items, it ends up being $735,000 increase from what our current budget is. So other operational type items, and again, anything highlighted in yellow, we'll talk a little bit more about because there's still some items that will need to be discussed and or finalized on those. Elections, we have added 40,000 to cover the city elections this next budget year. We believe that that will be enough, and typically will come in slightly lower than that, but that's what we'll budget. And that money can only be used for that purpose, so we don't use it for other things through the year. City attorney, this is a cost increase that's tied to our COLA per contract. And we've got it in there at $15,000. And so that would drop down if we were to change our COLA a little bit. And even at the 5.5%, it would drop just a little bit more from what this is. So we'll true that up once we get the COLA pins down. Cottonwood Heights Recreation, we had a reduction of 60,000 for the pickleball court sliding and in the prior year. And then we added in 62,000 for our share of playground equipment upgrades, and also 60,000 for tennis court refinishing. Mayor and council, we dropped out the topical surveys of $12,000 and also a road and traffic study from Central Wasatch Commission for $15,000. In the city manager, this is an area where we've got a placeholder. We put $35,000 in to cover projected liability insurance premium increases. We do not yet have that, and so that's a pure guesstimation on our part in terms of a placeholder.
We typically get that the first week of June approximately. And that
We might get some tickles on it near the end of May, but usually by the 1st of June is when we know.
For some reason it got delayed, we'd have to budget amend it.
It won't, they almost always have it before the budget year.
I think they
starts.
understand who they're dealing with.
Yeah,
They better.
they do, they do. We're expecting it
If you're
soon.
giving all this stuff to city's budget, you're gonna say, well, we didn't budget for that, so right.
Yeah.
The finance and IT, we're looking at 34,000, and these are items that are kind of coming external, but other departments in the city. So 4,000 for the GIS license upgrade for CED. And then a $30,000, this is a placeholder for the Spillman Historical Records. And this is seesawing kind of all over the place right now in terms of what's going to happen, but we're trying to work through and pin down exactly what we need to and should do with these records. And hopefully in the next several weeks, we'll pin that down and be able to come back with a firm number on that.
You want us?
Yeah, I mean, the goal is to work with Matt and Candy, and my objective is to get us completely away from them and convert some money into staff costs and have them manually pull those reports and put them in the new system and walk away and have it all done. And so we don't have a continuing cost for new servers or paying for licensing and so forth, and it'd be remarkably
Does
cheaper.
that currently charge us for that?
Did what?
Does that currently charge us for that?
Yeah, see, what had happened is most cities had their own server to store the Spillman records on. We didn't, Vec graciously allowed us to have it for many years, so we never had to buy servers or anything, so we saved all that money for those years, correct?
Right.
And so now that we've switched to first term, we gotta migrate the data to comply with grandma and other records retention evidence issues, but I think we can fix this without ongoing costs or buying servers. I don't want to do that. I want to cut the cord and move on with first term.
That was part of the transition. We had Spillman, different software or different program now, and that's why we have.
Kind of like my kids. I don't want to store their crap anymore.
Yeah.
It's good to set that up now.
Going away.
Yeah.
Tell me how it goes.
Yeah, so we'll bring an update on that as soon as we have it. But like I say, the cost, they keep seesawing around depending on what option, ends up being in place. City Hall, we didn't actually include any changes recommended at that level. Community and Economic Development has a $15,000 increase, and that's for the Community Renewable Energy Program noticing costs. Police overall increase is $94,000. Butlerville days overtime for the third day of that event that was never adjusted for adding that 5,000 in for that. Vec and Versaterm dispatch fee increase for $5,050. AT&T fleet tracking subscription, and a net increase of 8,000 over what we're currently paying to get that. Postage for evidence transportation, as they have to ship evidence around for different reasons. Could be testing, could be sharing with other police entities, what have you. Radio replacement funds, again, this is going to be dependent on availability of radios, because right now it's very difficult to find those radios due to the stipulation that we have from UCA to get those radios in place.
And that's not enough even to get us where we need to be, right?
Oh, and as you
Halfway
know,
there.
we've ordered some months ago. They can't even give me a projected date. I don't think their go live date can go live date. Nobody has the equipment, the radio, and you can't buy them.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's a statewide problem, so.
The Faro mapping subscription, $5,600 net increase. And then the flock camera system, which has to do with license plate recognition for several of those cameras, $20,000 net increase. Ordinance enforcement increase of 5,000, and that's made up of two items, one per call out, overtime for $2,000 for mainly weekend call outs during the summer. And then overtime for evenings and weekends, just kind of year round as they get called out for various reasons, of 3,000.
Can I just speak that real quickly? You'll get calls that they have dogs off leash and on the weekends, because they know the animal control officers aren't out there. So the objective is to schedule staff on weekends and have to pay them so that we can have some enforcement in those parks and open areas. And
No, that's good.
We get a lot with the trails too.
Exactly, that's
We get a
true.
lot of calls. on the
They know
trail.
we're not there and people are off, so they get heavily used. So.
Yeah. The fire increase, we've got a $270,000 placeholder. We actually think that's quite high.
It's gonna lower.
UFA hasn't had their final meeting. I don't know the actual timing, whether they're gonna try and pin that down in May or June. Do you know?
May, we have our finance meeting on the 9th,
Okay,
which presents the budget, then on the 16th is the board meeting,
okay,
where they adopt the tentative budget, so we should know in the next
okay,
10 days.
okay.
We're looking at about a 5% increase more than likely. So that's 270 is higher than 5.
Yeah, this is closer to, it's like 6.8 or so percent, so we would be down from this a little bit. Some.
Yeah.
So Public Works net changes of 111,950, and so that's to add a staff engineer FTE to help with the myriad of projects that they're trying to manage right now, and then some pedestrian crossing maintenance, net increase of 2,000.
That's what are we spending on that now?
I don't remember.
Is that like RFT lights and things like that?
RFPs and things of that.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head what that is in the budget. I was focusing on the changes.
Well, no, and
Yeah.
that's fine. Those work really well. It's nice to get them out.
If I recall, last year, we added some additional funds for that. This would provide some more.
Correct. Yeah. And then, so overall, the expenses are recommended, 22,850,000. That's an increase of $1.39 million after we take out all non-recurring grant items. And so that summary is made up of about 735,000 in personnel costs, 270 in UFA, 62,000 in Cottonwood Heights Recreation, $27,000 reduction in mayor council items, 35,000 in city manager items, which is the liability insurance, 40,000 in election costs, 15,000 in attorney costs, 94,000 in police costs, 34,000 in IT costs, 5,000 in ordinance enforcement costs, 15,000 in CED, and 111,000 in public works.
May I get one point of clarification? Regarding the 35,000 for the liability insurance. So is that what our insurance went up after the $4.1 million settlement was paid out? Is that
We don't
correlated
know
to
yet.
that?
That's possible.
Yeah.
So that's what we're budgeting, that it could go up,
That
to,
it
but
could.
it hasn't, the increase hasn't.
We
come
haven't
yet.
been informed yet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So transfers out of the general fund are recommended at $2.75 million into the capital project fund for the public works type capital projects. The debt service fund, $2.4 million, and that would be for land and buildings at $1,569,000, police vehicles at $487,000, public works vehicles, the heavier duty vehicles at $310,000. And then the public works light duty vehicles, these are the 6 pickup trucks that we purchased, the cost for us each year on them at $37,592. In addition, there's a transfer to the CDRA fund for $560,000 for the Hillside Plaza debt service. Now that will go up in the next year. I think the next year it's 938 or 58,000, something like that. But it does top out at a high of 1,130,000 the year after that. And then the stormwater fund transferring 200,000 into the stormwater fund, so that they have a net of 1.6 million to be able to spend on their items there. So the overall impact is a use of fund balance of $2.4 million. It would bring the budgeted ending fund balance to $5,684,000. Remember, that does not include any under expend or anything, so our actual ending fund balance would be higher than that. That would represent 22.4% of the revenues that are included in the budget. And so that we're within our limit of 35,000 at the high end, according to state statute. We're required to hold a 5% minimum, which would be 1.267 million. An additional 253,000 for the extra 1%. So that would be $1.521 million that we need to hold into our fund balance. And then Our compensated absences, those are estimated at the same as they were booked this last go around at $660,000. So that would leave $3.5 million available for appropriation 1 year from now. And again, that does not include any under expend, and I would expect that to be possibly up to $1 million higher.
Perfect.
Capital Improvements Fund, the Capital Improvements Fund, it's projected to have about a $379,000 beginning fund balance available for appropriation. Transfers in from the general fund again of $2.75 million for specific road related purchases. County ops and sales tax funding, and most of that money, I'm going to kind of go why we're transferring that money in. So in our general fund, we received county ops and sales tax funding for transportation of $800,000. We also received $400,000 from the quarter funds that were remaining. And then the remaining $1,550,000 comes from general fund revenues that go in to help to fund the remaining portion of that 2.75 million. In addition, we're projecting a $1.1 million grant, and this is specific to the Bengal Highland intersection down here. And then we've got a generic holder of $25,000. And you know what? I forgot from what I told you last time, we do need to look at interest revenues and increase those. So I'm going to make a note of that.
Which could be $400,000, right?
Yeah, it'll be more than doubling, I think, the interest that we have in the budget, and more like probably tripling around that range. So I will go and take a good close look at that in the next little bit. Expenses overall in our fund here, we're going to recommend expenses of $4,253,700, and that's street expenses of $4,050,000. That includes city striping at $175,000, roadway projects of $2.75 million, some street sign upgrades of $25,000. Sorry, I got million on the mind here. Bengal Highland intersection, $1.1 million, and that's the expense related to the revenue above. So, and then overall sidewalk projects of $203,700, $40,000 for the engineering and design of the 2300 East sidewalk project. And then our portion of the hawk signals are $43,700, and then 88 ramp projects of $35,000. Sidewalk 50/50 program at $50,000, and hazard mitigation of $35,000. And then we will eventually have to rebudget a myriad of projects that don't finish up during the year. And we won't have that all figured out by the time this budget goes into effect. So we'll bring that back as an adjustment in either September or October this year. So $4,253,000 of net expenditures. So on that, we would expect a decrease in our fund balance of $378,700. That would leave us with $474 available for appropriations in the capital projects fund at the end of the year.
So when do you rebudget revenues back into the that are for projects that don't get completed during the budget year?
We leave the funds in there. What happens is the fund balance will balloon up for the end.
Does that get reported? Okay, that gets reported.
That will get reported, and then we'll do a budget adjustment that will bring that fund balance down to a more expected number. It's hard as we have these multi-year projects to kind of project the reality of where they're going to go. Sometimes things will finish really quick, and other times it just seems to drag on. And it just kind of depends what's going on. Sometimes we have contractor issues and other things and materials issues. And
Yeah, it's typically the year-end budget amendment is what gets that, and that comes after.
Yeah, but we have usually by September, October timeframe.
June 30th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The stormwater fund. So this was a new fund that began in June of 2021. It's the revenue in here is modeled at $7.50 per month per ERU, which is equivalent residential unit. And we want to keep about $500,000 in this fund at any given time, just in case we have a project pop up that's more on, I'll call it an emergency basis, where we're not aware of say, deterioration or something that we need to take care of quickly. So that we are expecting about 500,000 in beginning fund balance available for appropriation. Our revenues are about 1.4 million coming from that stormwater billing of $7.50 per ERU. And in our initial estimate, we had projected that to increase at 3% per year going forward. We have not yet implemented any increases and don't recommend any increases in the current budget that's here. And we're utilizing Rocky Mountain Power to collect these revenues for us. In terms of transfers, that we have 200,000 coming in for the general fund, and between the 200,000 plus the 1 million in fees, it gives us about $1.6 million every year to go towards different needs. Expenses, again, we try and match this to our revenues. We have operational and maintenance costs of 674,000, which includes about 615,000 in personnel costs. We have $280,000 in there for the Corey Hill Circle reconstruction, as that's very much associated with curb and gutter in that area. And then we have about 652,000 that can be used for a myriad of things, from stormwater manhole and inlets, raising buried storm drain manholes, and other random capital expenditures related to storm drains. The overall impact to the stormwater fund balance would be having the same $500,000 ending fund balance. And that's again our target each year as we go through that.
So this is off topic just a second, but Matt, any updates on the cameraing project that we're doing?
For what, I'm sorry.
The cameraing, if that's
Oh.
the correct term, project?
We ran into some issues we bid out the project to raise the manholes, and unfortunately, no one bid on the project. So we have to go back out again and see what we can come up with. We can't camera until we raise and collar all the manholes.
Okay.
So we are pushing forward and just running into a few obstacles. We're trying to figure out why.
Okay.
I don't think it's me personally.
Well, that's what I heard. They didn't want that.
It's not me, I know.
It's the keychain.
Okay, the CDRA fund, we're projecting a beginning fund balance of $1,530,000. And this is going to be the third year, the year that we're coming up to, that we're budgeting for, of our tax increment financing on the Canyon Center parking project. And we've also included some Hillside Plaza Shopping Center operational costs and expenses revenues and expenses in this. So in the revenues, again, we'll have to look at this interest, we might be able to increase that, and I'll try and get a better projection on that. But this includes $10,000 of interest, $750,000 in property taxes. Again, that will be dependent on what we get distributed to us. It could be actually slightly less than that, but I'm trying to not have to come back and do an adjustment.
Add something on that, and this includes that breakdown, and Councilmember Brill, you talked about this before. We, per the development agreement, there's a breakdown on where those funds are distributed down even to the developer, which is the last level, and it includes the park project. So those are being set aside per the percentages outlined in the development agreement, and are being set aside for those purposes and when the funds are available. We probably will look this year at doing some visioning for that park area. Use some of the funds that we have for that to get ready once we have enough funds to start going out to bid, but just know that that's how that's being broken out and distributed.
And that land cannot be built on until the spring of 2025.
24, I believe, is 2024.
End of 2024 is
Yeah,
their construction deadline.
Yeah, so you're right.
So
Spring.
Canlis can use that for a place to station.
Yeah, through that time, yeah, through the end of next year.
Only through the end of 2024. Okay.
So
okay.
you're correct in that as far as the project moving forward, it would probably be spring of 2025. You're
Got it.
correct in that.
Great.
By that, we'll be third or fourth year into the,
Yeah, we could have.
and the
entire money
and the
collected,
park
really.
funding was specifically geared towards being completed upfront the first 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Yeah.
was not the same over the whole 20 years. It was negotiated.
it was front loaded for the park.
So we should have a good chunk of that.
Yeah, we will actually have about 238,000 available to us. Once we distribute those funds, which will be sometime later this month. So we'll have about 238. That's the distribution from last year. and
Didn't
this
you
year.
guesstimate something around, was it 600,000 or 700,000 likely to build out the
Mhm.
park, green
Yeah.
space and
Yeah.
public?
Yeah, the total amount that's anticipated to be collected on this is like 700,000. Yeah.
And that would be in the end of 2024, that we would come up,
2020.
we'd have about 700,000. The end of-
2026, in May of 2026, we should.
So if you were to back up and say how much might be available to get preliminary at phase one, perhaps of the park, in building in 2025, do you have any sense of what it might be?
Probably in the 400,000 to 500,000
Yeah.
range is what I would project.
Oh, no, we actually have more. We will have. Let's see, we will actually have 308,000 at the end of May here, and then we get about 154,000 a year on that distribution. And so that's kind of how that goes up.
I'm sorry,
So,
154
yeah,
approximately per year.
yeah.
Well,
So,
but that doesn't continue the whole
no,
time.
it stops,
front-loaded.
it stops at
in the
in
year.
2026, in May of 2026.
Well, hopefully we'll have this thing
We still
built by
pretty close to 500,000
2026.
by the time we can start, so I think, yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. Okay.
Anyhow. So operational revenue from the Hillside Plaza Shopping Center is expected about $550,000. That $550,000, it would be mainly from the rent from the Hillside
But we'll
Plaza
be paying the
area.
property manager, so we'll lose what, 10 or 15% of that to pay the property manager?
It depends on what we end up negotiating with the property manager. They had in there already built in a property management cost down below, which we have built into this as well. Continuing just through this, and then if you have additional questions, we'll address them here in just a half sec. So transfers in, we're transferring in 560,736 to cover debt service payments related to the Hillside Plaza. Again, that could balloon or will balloon up to near $1.13 million in future years. So expenses, we have about 10,000 in miscellaneous professional fees related to CDRA projects, $750,000 in total costs related to the Canyon Center project. And that's spending the tax increment financing that we get in, if you will, or dispersing that. 550,000 in operational expenses related to the Hillside Plaza, which then spends basically the revenue that comes in from the rents and other things up there. That's been pretty close to their annual in the last couple of years that they've been in operation. And then $560,000 in debt service payments. And so that our ending fund balance would be the same as the beginning, 1,530,000. And again, split up between Fort Union and the Cottonwood Corporate Center would be about 1,178,000 for the Fort Union area and 352,000 for the Cottonwood Corporate Center.
We gotta figure out how to use that, yeah, right.
You know, if there are, we used some money a few years ago when there were some road resurfacing that happened around some of those areas. And we're able to utilize some of the funds at that time. So there's a few things we can.
And there are some projects that we've identified and talked about pursuing with some of these funds as well.
Yeah, go across the road anywhere at all
On which one? On the,
on the corporate center. Yeah,
not sure. I
Let's
need
get
to
a
look
map.
at the projects. Yeah.
So the debt service fund, this fund is projected to have about a $13,357,000 fund balance at the beginning of our fiscal year. And that amount really is mostly escrow funds that are going to be used to pay off the 2014 and 2016 bonds. That will happen on July 1st of 2024. Expenses in this fund are expected to be $2.951 million. And that's made up of our police vehicle financing, our public works light duty vehicle, which is the 6 pickup trucks, our public works heavy duty vehicle financing, our current 2014, 2016, and 2021 building debt service that we need to transfer money for of just under 1.6 million. And then our public works building bond for the new public works building that's under construction of 521,000. And then we just throw in 500,000 just so we have a little bit of a slush to not go over.
$500.
Yeah, 500. Did I say 1,000?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I got millions of thousands on them. Sorry,
I'm
I'm
impressed. that
usually
you-
talking $500 flat for city budget here.
You sold that one pretty good.
Yeah. So revenues and transfers in of 2,789,000. So there's a transfer in of 2,405,000 from the general fund. And then interest from the escrow funds to cover our debt service at 383,650. Unfortunately, this interest amount won't change because it's in a pre-negotiated funding instrument. And then $500,000 miscellaneous again, so we don't go over budget there. And so our overall debt service fund would be a decrease of about $285,000 in escrow funds. And that will push the net available fund balance to $673,000 at the end of the year. We'll still have the 13 or so million dollars here available until literally the day after this budget ends. And then it will get spent down and relieve the bonds. So anyhow, in summary, you know, we feel this is a pretty good budget. There are some things on here you can go and see if you want to see in a quick nutshell our whole budget. This is our whole budget, our general fund and all our different funds, beginning balance, revenues in, expenditures out, transfers either in or out, projected ending fund balance, projected change in fund balance, projected fund balance restrictions that are outlined down in this area. And you can kind of go through and see that. And then our transfers kind of laid out down here where they're going from and to. So you can see the transfer to and then the transfer from.
I would add something there real quick. As you know, this whole process starts even before January. Appreciate the department heads and all of their input points. Appreciate the council members on budget committee and the compensation committees. And this isn't the end, obviously. This is the tentative budget. We're recommending approval of it tonight. And then there's additional conversations between now and June 20th, which we have to have it adopted on that night. But these things that Scott has mentioned, we'll be able to shore up, get your input on as well, and get that finalized, hopefully the first part of June. So we're ready to go June 20th.
Perfect.
Appreciate Scott and his work and his staff, and like I say, all the department heads and efforts.
Yeah, thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time and all that you do. This aspect is as sacred a responsibility as we have as a council. So I appreciate your enthusiasm for looking at lots of numbers. Thank you. Okay. Last item, the review of calendars and upcoming events. We're currently still in the children's choir rehearsal period that will end at the end of the month. The free shredding event here at City Hall for it's June 2nd from 9 a.m. to 1. Encourage people to come and shred sensitive documents. And then July 27th to the 29th, Cottonwood Heights Butlerville Days we're excited about. And contact Annette. We need volunteers and sponsors. We do not have anything to discuss in a closed session. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn our work session.
We adjourn the work session, reconvene the business meeting at 7.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.